morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to this important event where we're commemorating the International Day of Universal Access to Information. My name is Patrick Kamara. I'm a broadcast journalist working with Wizards Foundation, and I also work with NTV Uganda and KFM. Today we commemorate the Universal Access to Information. It's a very important day because information is key. Information, when given, can help you to make better choices on your health, education, or even fighting corruption in many countries around the world. Information, if people are given information, they are able to become competent to understand their rights and their responsibilities. Also, when they are giving mandate to their leaders, they can also, at the end of the day, ask for accountability. So information is power. Information can also help us to fight the pandemic, like we are in now, or also fight corruption. So today, as we gather here at the Serena International Conference Center here in Kampala, we'll be joined by about 14 countries across the continent to discuss about the issue of access to information. We have lined up people with expertise in this area, but we also have you who's following us on TV and following us online. So we are going to count on you to give us information and give us ideas on how we can actually access more information, but also build a vibrant citizenry that is also have civic competence. Today, I'm working with my colleague, Sandra Twinoburio. Let me hand over to Sandra Twinoburio.
Thank you so much, Patrick Kamara. First things first, I'm very honored to be co-moderating this with you, Patrick. It's an honor indeed. And I believe as journalists who are standing in this group, it is our turn to actually speak and share our ideas on how much information is very important to us. Just to introduce myself, I am Sandra Twinoburio, like he mentioned. I am a news anchor currently working with NTV Uganda. I am also an entrepreneur in fashion and also the founder of an Employment Ends With Me youth initiative. Now, like it is said, information can be the difference between life and death. And today we do want to share knowledge on how we all can work together. Different countries, different stakeholders, different civil society groups. How can we work together to make this possible? Now, the theme today is the right to know, building back better with access to information. And I do want to thank in a special way our partners that have made this day possible. We are definitely here because of our partners that are present here. And I do want to mention them out quickly: the Government of the Republic of Uganda, UNESCO, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the African Union, Africa Freedom of Information Center, and Twaweza East Africa. Now, it is very important whenever we're having conversations like this to engage our online audience. And like my co-moderator said, we are having an online conversation. And we ask you, if you're not in this room, if you're watching us from elsewhere, please be part of a conversation and use the hashtag Access to Info Day, and the other hashtag is the right to know. We'll be delighted to hear your thoughts on this particular thing that we are actually looking at today. You have seen different countries come through this year alone, and we've seen a number of things happening, getting to the polls, COVID-19, a number of things, and it is very important for people to have information so that they can make informed decisions. Once again, I do welcome our online audience. Do remember to be part of the hashtag, and a special thank you to our partners, of course, Africa Freedom of Information Center. You have made this day possible with your other partners, and we appreciate that happening. It is a Tuesday, and I believe it is our time to really share wherever they are, different people joining us online. But I do also want to encourage us that if you're in this room and there is something you want to share, you want to talk about, do send it. I believe we have a team online that is going to bring those things forward, and we can put it on our panelists, to discuss that. We have 3 hours here, so I do not want to take a lot of your time. I want to immediately invite Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa, who is the Executive Director of Africa Freedom of Information Center. I do want to hand over to you so that you can officially invite us to this event. Welcome, Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa. I think the clap can be a bit louder than that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you, everyone. The Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament of Uganda, who I believe will be arriving in the next few minutes, the Honorable Minister of State for Information, Communication and Technology, the Honorable Joyce Nabosa Sebugwao, Your Excellency, Ambassador Dr. Sarah Hamad, the Head of the Africa Governance Architecture, Secretariat at the African Union Commission, Your Excellency, Ambassador Maria Hackinson, Ambassador of Sweden to Uganda, Mr. Robert Koth-Chan, Country Representative, Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Professor Hubert Gidsen, Regional Director and Representative of UNESCO for East Africa, who is attending online, Mr. Aidan Eyakuze, Executive Director, Twaweza East Africa, permanent secretaries and senior government officials here present, partners of AFIC, business, media, and civil society leaders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning and most welcome to this event. I'm very pleased on behalf of the Africa Freedom of Information Center and on behalf of the partners with whom we are organizing this event today to welcome you to this regional dialogue to commemorate the second International Day for Universal Access to Information, which is hosted by the Africa Freedom of Information Center in partnership with the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Africa, the African Union Commission, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and Twaweza East Africa. This year's commemoration, ladies and gentlemen, is being celebrated globally under the theme, The Right to Know, Building Back Better with Access to Information. Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, across the East African region and beyond, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted and significantly affected lives, families, communities, and also economies at large. Many businesses have collapsed. At the time governments need resources to take care of their citizens, they have lost much needed revenues. Thoughtful business leaders and professional leaders have lost their lives to the pandemic. Health services have been overstretched, while questions on the actual impact of the pandemic on educational services across the continent and beyond are still being asked. It is of crucial importance that public access to information will have to be at the center of rebuilding lives, public services, and economies in Africa and across the world at large. Before the outbreak of this COVID-19 pandemic in 2015, we at Africa Freedom of Information Center, through a project supported by Swedish CIDA in Uganda, Malawi, and Kenya, learned that when citizens access public information, corruption and inefficiency in the delivery of services is addressed. And I'll cite some of the examples. In Kabare, southwestern Uganda, a contract whose completion certificates had been cleared as satisfactory and fully paid by government was exposed by an information request for abandoning the project and was forced to return and complete the site 2 years after he had received payment for having successfully completed the project. In Western Kenya, government had been paying for sanitary pads to keep girls in school, yet no supply was being made for several years. This was fixed following an information request. While in Malawi, Kasungu district, a contractor who was receiving payment for the supply of textbooks to schools was supplying air for a very long time and had been paid consistently by government. This also was exposed through an information request, and government forced the contractor to make good by supplying those textbooks. Right Honorable Speaker, Minister Professor Gigzen, ladies and gentlemen, we have also learned through our work supported by the Democratic Governance Facility, DGF, in Uganda, that when government agencies disclose information, they receive quality feedback from citizens and other data users, which helps them to perform better their agencies. For example, the PPDA, this is the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Authority of Uganda, where the organization successfully implemented AFIC's recommendations, and this led the organization to become the continent's shining example for proactively disclosing information and citizen participation. And as a result, at the 12th East African Procurement Forum, it was resolved by all procurement regulatory authorities of East Africa that open contracting should be implemented by all East African members of the East African community, following Uganda's shining example. Dear ladies and gentlemen, unequal access to information is undermining the efforts of government and international community to address widening inequality. Emerging findings from the study we are implementing in Eastern Africa with support from the IDRC of Canada reveal that whereas governments in East Africa annually spend over 65% of public budgets through public procurement, women-owned enterprises win less than 1% of these contracts. Women find it very difficult to access information on procurement opportunities. They find it very difficult or impossible to enhance their capacities in order to be able to win tenders. Right Honorable Speaker, Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, AFIC is appreciative of UNESCO and African Union's commitment to support African governments and civil society campaigns towards the adoption and effective implementation of access to information laws. As we speak, 29 countries, including 5 in the Greater East African region, are yet to adopt access to information laws, while 26, including Uganda, that have adopted these laws face significant challenges with their implementation. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, public access to information will make the road to recovery from the effects of the COVID-19 less longer and less painful. Let us all commit to building back better with access to information. Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, AFIC's work and that of our members across the continent on monitoring public contracts and services can be of great value in supporting the work of parliaments on oversight by ensuring that they receive timely feedback from citizens on how different government departments, agencies, and ministries are implementing these projects. We would therefore like to work with parliaments across the continent for the benefit of citizens. I would like to invite you, Honorable Minister and Speaker in absentia, to both visit our work in the communities so that you witness first-hand experience of the value of public access to information. Dear distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention. I wish you very good deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa, who is the Executive Director of Africa Freedom of Information Center. I am also reliably informed that the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Olanya, is here, and we had earlier mentioned that once he gets here, we shall rise to sing the Uganda anthem and also the East African anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, shall we rise?
Maybe we can do the protocol. But maybe kindly you could call the next speaker to speak to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Patrick. So, Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa, thank you so much for your keynote speech. I do believe that the right to information for every individual is very paramount. And today we'll dive into that conversation. Just to briefly talk about, before I invite the next speaker, it is recognized by 6 African treaties, including the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. We also have African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, African Union Convention Against Corruption, the African Youth Charter, African Charter on Values and Principles of Public Service, and the Administration, and the African Center on Statistics. Now, furthermore, the international human rights instruments, such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, have for long recognized this fundamental right. We continue to talk about how important it is for all of us to have access to information in order to make very informed decisions. So, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to invite our next speaker now that we've been officially invited. Welcome to this event. His Excellency, the Ambassador Dr. Salah Hamad. He is joining us online, and he is the head of the African Governance Architecture Secretariat at the African Union, that expresses the African Union's determination to protect and promote human and people's rights. Shall we rise?
Thank you.
The Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament is here. We'll now sing the Uganda anthem and the East African anthem. Let's stay standing. Shall we sit? Thank you so much, the Right Honorable Speaker, for gracing our event. We've been waiting for you, and just to briefly take you through what we've discussed. The Executive Director of Africa Freedom of Information Center did set the pace of our discussion this morning, and we basically just want to dive into the importance of allowing people, different categories of people, access information, because we know access to information allows individuals to make very independent, informed decisions. For inclusivity, we want to inform the general public that we do have a very sign language interpreter, and do not worry if you're wondering if that has not been catered for, but it has definitely been catered for. Access to information means that every single individual can actually get the right information. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd earlier introduced His Excellency the Ambassador Dr. Salah Hamad, that is the head of the African Governance Architecture Secretariat at the African Union, that expresses the African Union's determination to promote and also protect human and people's rights, consolidate democratic institutions and culture, and also ensure good governance and the rule of law. Among many other things, Your Excellency, we know that you have dedicated a lot of your time to world development and also human rights, and you do advocate for safety of journalists. We do want this morning to understand from where you stand. I believe you can hear me. Have we made any progress? Over to you.
Thank you very much, moderator. The Right Honorable Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda, the Honorable Minister of State for Information of the Republic of Uganda, distinguished representative of UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern African Union for Eastern Africa, distinguished country representative of the UNHCR, distinguished executive director Information Center, distinguished participants, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol duly observed. I bring you greetings from His Excellency Mr. Musa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, and His Excellency Ambassador Bankole Adoyi, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security of the African Union Commission. Today, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union joins the rest of the world to commemorate the International Day for Universal Access to Information 2021 under the theme, The Right to Know, Building Back Better with Access to Information. The 74th UN General Assembly proclaimed 28th of September as the International Day for Universal Access to Information in October 2019. Although the day had been proclaimed by UNESCO General Conference in 2015. The theme of this year's commemoration will highlight the role of access to information laws and their implementations in order to build back strong institutions for public good and sustainable development after the COVID-19 pandemic. This, of course, is also to strengthen the right to information and international cooperation as a human rights. This commemoration is taking place in a difficult context as we are all faced by the challenges and the obstacles of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is also a difficult time for the right to access of information as it is threatened around the world. Restrictions on access to information are attacks against democracy and clear violations of human and people's rights. The African Union Commission wishes to seize this opportunity to call on all AU member states to take necessary actions to improve access to information as a human right. The commemoration of the International Day for Universal Access to Information is a reminder to all governments around the world to respect their commitment to advance and promote and protect the right to access to information as a human right. This year's celebration and commemoration is an opportunity for all member states of the international community to reaffirm the importance of cherishing information as a public good. The theme recognizes the impact of building stronger institutions on our health, our human rights, democracies, and sustainable development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the African Union Commission would like to seize this moment to pay tribute to UNESCO for the role it continues to play in advocating for freedom of expression and access to information from the adoption of the landmark Windhoek Declaration of 1991 to date. It would be fitting at this juncture to also recognize the role played by the Special Rapporteur of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights on freedom of expression and access to information, noting with acknowledgement and encouragement the sterling work done in tackling the state of freedom of expression on the continent. The African Union, as the continental organization, reiterates its commitment to promote the right of access to information despite the challenges faced at all levels. This commitment is underlined by the AU theme of the year 2021, Arts, Culture and Heritage, Levers for Building the Africa We Want. And it is indeed within the same context that the African Union Commission is committed to working closely with its member states, African civil society organizations such as the Federation of African Journalists and the African Freedom of Information Center in close collaboration with UNESCO to advance the promotion of access to information in Africa. That way, we will ensure our collective efforts to build the Africa we want and the Africa we deserve. I wish you fruitful deliberations and once again, happy Access to Information Day. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Ambassador Dr. Salah Hamad, the head of the African Governance Architecture. And once again, we do invite you to use our hashtags. Do remember that we are glad and looking forward to hear some of your thoughts on the different deliberations that will be happening here. Without further ado, please allow me invite our next speaker. And I believe he is in our midst, Mr. Robert Kochan. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to discuss today, we ask that if you have any discussion or any query, any question, do note it down and we'll get our different panelists really reaching out to us. Now, Mr. Robert Kochan is the country representative of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. He has been in this position since 2019 and he started his international career as the legal officer with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights in Banjul. In 1999, from 2006 to 2009, he worked for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Uganda, where he opened the Karamoja Regional Office in Mauritius. Now, I should let you know, ladies and gentlemen, that in most of his key speeches that I've seen or read, he has emphasized the need for individual states to identify the legal and the legal aid model that can maximize access to free aid for all individuals within its territory. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Robert Kochan.
The Speaker of Parliament, Right Honorable Jacob Olania. I plead to stand by the protocol that was set by my predecessor, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Salah Ahmad, my brother and colleague from the African Union Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, which we also called UN Human Rights, because many people choke at the acronym, OHCHR. My brother Salah called us ACR. We accept it, but it's easier to just say UN Human Rights. So on behalf of that office, I'm glad to be part of this regional dialogue to commemorate the International Day for universal access to information under the theme, The Right to Know, Building Back Better with Access to Information. I wish to commend the Africa Freedom of Information Center, partnering with the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, UNESCO, and Twaweza, East Africa, for organizing this regional dialogue. As part of the organizers of this endeavor, I would like to express special thanks to the Speaker of Parliament, because we don't take your presence here as granted, since we are fully aware of the heavy schedule which is yours. So, Honorable Jacob Olania, thanks for making it to this place. I wish also to express our solidarity with all stakeholders and renew our commitment as the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Uganda to work with the government, development partners, civil society organizations, the media, and others relevant actors on highlighting on how to effectively address challenges to access to information. The International Day for Universal Access to Information was proclaimed by the UN General Assembly in October 2019. Since then, 28 September is celebrated worldwide, and in Uganda, the African Freedom of Information Center and partners have celebrated the event annually ever since. This is considered as a remarkable African contribution to the edifice of human rights. As UN Human Rights in Uganda, we are particularly delighted to support such processes. The right to access to information is important because it plays a vital role in informing the population about public affairs and monitoring the actions of the government at all levels, so they can meaningfully participate in their communities. The lack of access to information, a contrario, is one of the factors that continues to hamper the realization of sustainable development in Africa. COVID-19 pandemic has given access to information renewed importance, given the misinformation going on about the pandemic. Technology, and especially social media, have been used to spread false information, intentionally or not. This also often happens happens when the media reports wrong information or information that is not independently verified. International Day for Universal Access to Information is observed to raise awareness and highlight the role of access to information laws and the implementation to build back better, strong institutions for the public good and sustainable development, as well as to strengthen the right to information and international cooperation in implementing these human rights. It also highlights the importance of freedom of the press and reminds government of their duty to respect and uphold the right to freedom of expression enshrined under Article 19 of the United Nations, of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948, and also Article 9 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Article 41 of the Constitution of Uganda in 1995 gives every citizen a right of access to information in the possession of the state or any other organ or agency of the state, except where the release of the information is likely to prejudice the security or sovereignty of the state or interfere with the right to the privacy of any other person. The passing of the Access to Information Act in 2005 and the Access to Information Regulations of 2011 provide every Ugandan a legal and constitutional right to access information held by any ministry, department, of agency, of government. This is commendable. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development marked a paradigm shift toward a more transformative model of sustainable development aiming to secure freedom from fear and freedom from want for all without discrimination. The contribution of the citizens and civil society actors to attainment of SDGs cannot be overemphasized. Access to information is enshrined in the SDG under Goal 16. which has to do with peace, justice, and strong institutions. In particular, SDG Target 16.10 is to ensure public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms in accordance with national legislation and international agreements. Ladies and gentlemen, over the last 2 weeks, we launched and supported a social media campaign on access to information, including Twitter chats on the implementation of access to information through the Universal Periodic Review Mechanism. Uganda will be peer-reviewed again in January 2022. I therefore wish to call upon the relevant stakeholders to actively and jointly mobilize for the development and implementation of an action plan to drive the realization of the UPR recommendation, especially the right to information so that the public can participate actively in the acceleration of socio and economic transformation and attainment of Uganda's Vision 2040. As I conclude, on behalf of the UN Human Rights Office in Uganda, I wish to reiterate our strong commitment to continue working with government, development partners, civil society, and the media for a transformed and prosperous Uganda where access to information is not a privilege. I thank you for listening.
You know, the clap should be a bit louder. We've seen our speakers really keep time, and it is only fair that we appreciate them for keeping time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about the 17 sustainable goals and you look at the few years to go that we have, from your different countries that you're at, do you sort of see that we are likely to achieve any of the sustainable development goals? Here, we want to understand, when we look at SDG 16, how far have we gone? When we compare notes, are our institutions able to access information that they need? Are they able to make informed decisions? Those are the questions that I believe we can put on the table today and actually analyze. Now, allow me invite our next speaker. Big thank you to all of you that are keeping time, our speakers. Allow me invite Professor Hubert Jigzen, who is the Regional Director and representative of UNESCO, the Regional Office for East Africa. He is joining us online. A very good morning, still good morning. Welcome, the floor is now all yours.
Thank you very much. Can you please confirm that you can both hear and see me?
All see you, and
I guess that was a yes. Thank you. The Honorable Speaker of Parliament of Uganda, the Honorable State Minister for Information and Communications Technology of the Republic of Uganda, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, all protocols observed. Greetings from the UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Africa. A very good morning and welcome to all connected to this hybrid event on the occasion of the International Day for Universal Access to Information. I must say it made me very happy this morning to put on the camera to your event to see that indeed this is a hybrid event and that you are able to meet physically in Uganda. This is an event for Eastern Africa. So in all the countries in Eastern Africa, we have connections. But it's important that you can meet physically. This is about access to information. And let me remind that information exchange is so much more efficient when you are physically meeting. So this medium that we have been using, video conferencing, is fine, but it is not as efficient. And I would have preferred to be with you in the room. But let me use for now the video conferencing modality. So the importance of access to reliable information has really been clearly illustrated by this ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. If you remember, especially at the onset last year, it triggered an immense hunger for information by the general public and also by specific stakeholders like health professionals, but also researchers, policymakers. And indeed, we have seen that in times of crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic, accurate information can save lives. As a UN agency with a specific mandate to promote the free flow of ideas by word and image, UNESCO supports communication and information communities to tackle the current COVID-19 crisis and related, and we see it still ongoing, infodemic, including, we do that through sharing life-saving information, debunking the continuous flow of misinformation. I tend to say that it is striking to see during this crisis that the spread of mis and disinformation is even faster than the spread of the virus itself. But also we work through strengthening the implementation of the fundamental right to access to information, the leveraging of the use of public interest media, ICTs and open educational resources for e-learning, and connecting people online. And all this has proven to be essential to continue our functioning in daily life, in businesses, but also, for instance, the education sector. And this is why UNESCO also monitors the impact of the crisis on media freedom, safety of journalists, and the fundamental right to access information. And this underpins our call for open access to scientific information and to basic science research and innovation. And I think COVID again made the case for this. Remember, early on in the pandemic, Chinese researchers shared the genetic code of the virus, and that was the basis for other countries then to develop testing, to develop eventually a working vaccine, and we have now a wide range of vaccines available. So this comes through the sharing of knowledge and access to scientific information. And that is meaning that all resources developed on COVID-19 should be made available free and open licensed. And we know that that is still not the case. But access simply is not enough. We need information that is relevant, that is verified and checked, and is therefore reliable, but also available in languages and that people do understand. And I'm very happy to see that we have the sign language included in the event. It should be the standard nowadays. This is crucial for building forward better. We're not going to build back to the same that we had. This is, for instance, what we're doing here in Kenya in partnership with the EU via the initiative #coronavirus facts. And that is to empower journalists and the public with fact-checking tools on the coronavirus, and with a dedicated online hub to be launched next week together with our partners. So I hope you will join us again next week in that event and that you will be able to use this online hub and fact-checker tools that we will present there. On this day, we should reaffirm our commitment to promoting constitutional and statutory guarantees for access to information in a continent where only 26 out of the 54 countries have access to information laws, and of which 7 are in Eastern Africa, in this region. This certainly represents some progress if I look back over the past years, but I ask, is this really bold enough to ensure effective protection of this fundamental human right? With these introductory remarks, allow me to now read the official message of the UNESCO Director General, Ms. Audrey Azoulay, on the occasion of the 2021 International Day for Universal Access to Information. Access to reliable information saves lives. misinformation and rumors can cost them. This simple lesson is one we have learned to our detriment in recent years. Whether fighting a global pandemic or supporting public debate, we need free, reliable, and independent information as the foundation upon which democratic societies are built. This is why, for UNESCO, ensuring access to information is a top priority and one enshrined in our Constitution. It is also why this fundamental human right is written into the goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And lastly, it is the reason that the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 28 September as the International Day for Universal Access to Information. On this date, UNESCO partners with the rest of the UN family to acknowledge this right as a key to enabling broader access to data, information, and knowledge, and empowering citizens in their efforts to build brighter futures. The events planned globally for the International Day highlight how the right to information can help individuals rise to contemporary challenges and underline the importance of statutory guarantees for public access to information. However, our commitment to freely accessible information will only be effective if it is truly universal. In other words, it must leave no one behind. This is why we urge all countries to adopt legislation in this field and to strengthen the implementation of such guarantees where these already exist. Governments must ensure safe and transparent data collection, strengthening record keeping, and enable accurate analysis. And they must align these efforts with international privacy standards. At UNESCO, we firmly believe that access to information must be recognized as a pillar of sustainable development and as a prerequisite for the promotion and protection of all human rights. As we adapt our societies to face common challenges, the right to information must be at the center of efforts to ensure a more informed and resilient tomorrow. And that ends the message of the Director General of UNESCO. In closing, I thank all those who have contributed to organizing this fantastic event. And a special thanks go to each and every one of you present here and connected here for participating. Over to you, MC.
Jigzen, you do bring in a very important point, and I do want to ask my co-moderator to move around with a microphone. I want to pose a question to the general audience that is here present. And I want to ask, when the country, for instance, Uganda, first talked about COVID-19, a very first case of COVID-19, I would like to ask someone in here to tell us the very first thing that they felt when we registered our very first case of COVID-19. I ask that we make this so quick. I want someone to briefly tell us how they felt when that happened.
Do you want to put up your hand? Or may I just choose anybody at random? Sarah Kagingo, can I come to you?
Thank you. Our country put its best foot forward.
Yes.
By ensuring we delayed importation of COVID to our country. So we are one of those very last countries to get COVID, to get our very first case. At a personal level, I was in a state of shock, very scared, did not know what to do next. But our country was also very clear on what we must do to ensure we don't catch COVID.
Yes.
So while I was worried that, I must keep home, I won't attend such events anymore, I was also confident that we we would be all right, that as long as we have our masks on, we keep social distance, we would be all right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I did ask that question because when we registered the very first case of COVID-19, majority of us were scared. We did not know how to go about it. We did not trust that the masks alone would save us. Now, this is why I do believe his presentation has brought out a very key idea that the lack of information can always create the general feel of fear, of people do not know what is happening. So lack of information puts you in a state of what is going to happen to me. For example, are we all vaccinated here? Why are we not all vaccinated? Or do we have concerns? Is it because we don't have the right information? How will I feel after I take it? Is it safe for me? So the access to information would definitely allow different individuals to make the right decisions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please do allow me invite the Minister of State for Information, Communication and Technology, Honorable Joyce Nambosa Sebugwao. And I also do like to inform you that you'll be inviting the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, Honorable Jacob Olanya. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the Honorable Minister.
The Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament of Uganda, Honorable Jacob Olanya, the Region Director and Representative of UNESCO, Professor Hubert Gizen, the Country Representative, Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. Robert Kochani, the Head of African Governance Architecture at the African Union, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Sal Hamadi, the Executive Director, Africa Freedom of Information, Mr. Gilbert Senduga, the organizers of this event, the press, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be part of this day to commemorate the universal access to information. Indeed, information is part and parcel of delivery of government services. As a matter of fact, the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance instituted the Information Access Center and the Government Citizen Interaction Center, which have continued to promote access to information to the public. I urge the general public to utilize these platforms to access the right information and desist from relying on unreliable sources. I also call upon our officers to timely and efficiently provide this information. My role today is to invite our Right Honorable Speaker to the podium as our guest of honor, and I won't waste much of my time because we need what he's going to say to us. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome the Right Honorable Speaker, Jacob Olanya, to the podium. I thank you.
I think I'm within a safe distance, and I hope all of you are wearing your masks so that I can speak freely. Is that okay? And I just tested yesterday, results came this morning, I'm negative. Is that okay? Okay, let me remove this so that I can speak freely. The distinguished leaders in this dialogue, the Honorable Minister of State, I don't know whether my members of Parliament are here, the moderators of this program, and all of you distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here to just share a few thoughts about the discussions in this dialogue. They're important and they're timely. And we should widen the purpose for which we do these things. I've listened to, I think, Mr. Robert from the OHCHR, and I've also listened to the professor. It all comes down to one thing. What is the purpose of this glorified access to information? What is the main purpose? And my understanding is the overall purpose of this access is how does it transform the lives of the citizens in a country. Because we can end up being in boardroom discussions, elitist discussions about what we do, about access, Twitter, Facebook, and so on and so forth, without being context specific about the various issues that emerge from where we come from. Where I come from, I don't want to throw figures and numbers and statistics, but the greater majority of people do not have access even to a telephone. And then here we are talking about Twitter, Facebook, and how Twitter and Facebook will give access to information to my rural mother who does not have a phone. Even if she did, she would not know how to use it, let alone smartphone. Are we being relevant to the bigger population? Are we? Or are we just flying above with the important things of the world, global issues, without dealing with the real transformational things that hold our people back? That's a discussion I'm ready to have with you. I have listened to the speeches which were made, and there's no mention of the ordinary person in the world. Well, I think that's the structure of the world, but being in my position and knowing how many people sent me here, it is my obligation to give a voice to those who don't have voices in these meetings. And I intend to do just that. The state has a responsibility to protect. Protect what? Individuals. Individuals' entitlement to what? Life, property, and information. State obligation to do that. A state that cannot protect private life, private property, and information is not worth its name. Our country, Uganda, has already enacted the Access to Information Act. The history of that is that it was first sponsored by a private member, then government took it over. It became a government law. We processed it, it became law in 2005. The question is, since the enactment of that legislation over 2005, 2010, over it is a whole period, over 10 years, of what benefit has it been to the ordinary person? since its enactment. So if we are to do a post-legislative scrutiny of this particular law, what would the ordinary person say about this law? Of what benefit has it been to the ordinary person, this law? Please do that research, you people in the civil society organization, and tell me, because I want to know how this law has contributed to the ordinary growth of a citizen in this country. I would like to know. We have passed laws, we have passed policies, we have created institutions of government, we have given them mandates, and even given discretionary powers to human beings to manage those things. Those things are in place. I've had the statement that information is a public good, and it is. But to who? To who? Is it just a high-sounding rhetoric? Or does it actually come in terms of action to help people who need this information to change their situation and status? And I insist we have to give the thing some context specificity. And I cannot be in Uganda and talk about other places, because I would not know what I would be talking about. Two aspects of access. One is seeking out information from the government, where every citizen has that right. Two is the citizen having access to information in already the public domain. If we are talking about COVID, it wasn't because of the presidential address where you have groups of 10, 20 people sitting on a small radio transmitter to listen to what the president was saying. If you are to rely on Twitter, Facebook, you will not have access to them. And yet they have a right of access to information in the public domain. What can we do differently so that we move away these discussions from boardrooms and conference centers to engagement in the rural dust and muddy places? Because if we can't change their lives, then we have no purpose saying the things we say so eloquently in big meetings like this, wired through, what are these things called, the one I was watching? Let's start thinking. Section 3 of our law says promotion of effective and efficient government. Forget about the rest because they don't make sense to me. Effective and efficient. For what purpose? Effective and efficient in terms of public service delivery to the people. That's my understanding from the background I come from. Is it achieving that? Is it achieving that? Is this act in Uganda part of what the country thought it needed most at that time, or is it part of the international drive? UN and all the big people to try and talk things which they understand, but which the greater population of this world don't understand. I'm going to be the devil's advocate. Let's start thinking. How do we move this thing away and have this access to information in a way that supports transformational programs in communities that are so way below in terms of progress and development? I used to draft laws as a vocation. That's how I used to earn my money. Legislative drafting. one of the assessment criteria we use, apart from the instructions that come to a drafter from the government, we want this done, they give you drafting instructions, you start breaking it down into legislative language. Of course, there have been many changes. But the final assessment, when the law is passed, some aspect of post-legislative scrutiny is what in drafting we call, Professor Zentaki from University of London called it the pyramid of virtues. The pyramid of virtues. At the bottom, the wider bottom of the pyramid are processes of drafting, consultations, and so on and so forth. Then it moves up to issues of passing in parliament. But then when it's finally passed, the apex comes. And at the tip of it is what we call the efficacy of the legislation. Is it fit for purpose? Is it fit for purpose? If it is not, just shelve it. If you can't shelve it, bring it back, we remove it, because it's useless for purposes that help people sustain life. I've seen a numerous lists of purpose under Section 3 of the Act, where they outline what purpose this law must serve. 2005, 2015, so it's more than 10 years now. If you look at Section 3 of the Act, as the law met the standard of efficacy, was it met as it served its purpose? Or is it something that the Minister of State for Information, this is information, can come and say, we also have an act, by the way. When the UN comes and all the big people come, no, we also have an act. We passed it all the way in 2005. Question is, what has it done since you passed it? That's a discussion we should have. My background is rural, and I speak rural. I don't speak the sophisticated ideas of big people and so on and so forth. With these few words, I thank you and declare this meeting open. God bless.
They try to organize the space. Okay, they will include the Executive Director of AFIC, Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa. Please come in front here, sir. They will include Dominic Pereira. Dominic Pereira, please come and stand in front here. They'll include Ms. Nicole Berlin. Ms. Nicole. They'll include Mr. Robert Kochen. They'll include Her Excellency Maria Hakanson. They will include the State Minister, the Right Honorable Joyce Sebugwao, and the Right Honorable Speaker, sir. The people taking the pictures will actually advise on how best we can do that, on how we can stand. They are more skilled in advising that way.
To celebrate the International Day for Universal Access to Information on September 28th, join UNESCO to build back better, thanks to access to information. Not only is access to information a basic human right, it also represents a key pillar for resilient and inclusive knowledge societies, as well as sustainable development. Protecting and promoting access to information improves transparent governance, helps protect our health, reduces inequalities, contributes to sustainable development, strengthens resilience, and addresses climate change. When we have to face a global crisis, Whether it concerns our health or saving our planet, it becomes vital to have what the Sustainable Development Goals urge us to achieve, namely public access to information and fundamental freedoms as part of our future. Access to Information Day 2021 will highlight the role of access to information laws and, vitally, their actual implementation to build back effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions for the public good. It will focus on how countries need specialized and strong oversight bodies to ensure that governments make information available proactively, as well as to respond to public queries. Each citizen should take ownership of their right to information to ensure that they can make informed decisions. And with regards to the best interests of humanity and the earth we live on. On September 28th and 29th, join our series of webinars and all the online events organized by UNESCO and its partners across the world to protect and celebrate our right to access information. Please visit our website for more information.
All right, welcome back and thank you for that photo moment. And for those of you who are joining us on NTV Uganda and different platforms, we're just taking a break and we're back in the auditorium here at the Serena Conference Center, the Serena Hotel in Kampala. Gathering on this day of the International Day for Universal Access to Information. And once again, you're most welcome. Now we're going to have a panel that is going to discuss strengthening the implementation of the right to information. Each of the panelists will get about 3 minutes to make their case, and thereafter we shall get questions or comments from the audience and those who are following us on virtual methods. So allow me to invite the different panelists to take their seats. Others are online, others are with us here in this auditorium. May I invite, let me begin with those who are joining us here physically, and then later I'll invite those who are joining us online. I have Mr. Joshua Akandwanaho, Business Process Analyst at NITAU. Please, let's welcome Joshua Akandwanaho with a round of applause. Is Joshua Akandwanaho in this auditorium? Please, or maybe his representative. Please come and take your seat. We also have Mr. Edward Sechewa, Executive Director, Hub for Investigative Media. Edward, please take your seat. Okay. Did I have them mixed up? You're not ready for this? Okay. I suppose we shall have to go with you. Am I allowed to amend? Am I allowed to amend? Are you guys ready? Okay. On strengthening the implementation of the right to information, let me invite Mr. Mugambi Kia, Executive Director, Article 19 East Africa. He's joining us online. Mr. Mugambi, let us know whether you can hear us and whether you are ready to make your presentation on this very topic, strengthening the implementation of the right to information.
I hope you can hear me.
Sign Impact Innovation Limited, who is also joining us online. Simon, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Executive Director, Article 19, East Africa. You have about 3 minutes, sir, to make your case. Please carry it forward from there.
Thank you, the moderator. Thank you, the hosts and the organizers of this very auspicious conversation. When we talk about the right to know and strengthening implementation, I think there are a number of spaces or spots we need to focus on. One is how effective is the law itself? Now, is the law based on principles of, for example, of full disclosure, of the obligation to publish? Is it? I think the Right Honourable Speaker is one who asked, is it fit for purpose? So there are definite principles that should go into the law to make sure that the law is not just mechanical or cyclical, and make sure that, for example, that the law is accessible to both those in urban areas, in rural areas, the rich, the mighty, and the poor, and people in different sectors. So the first question about strengthening it is to do an audit of the laws that are prevalent. Remember, the right to information is a basic human right. And therefore, as a basic human right, it must be accessible, available, affordable in terms of people's ability to interact with it. The second point I want to make is when you want to strengthen it, you must also then look at how effective is it in terms of its usage. I always start with, again, who would be the main beneficiary? That would be the citizen. There's the ordinary citizen able to access and use that right. Now, if that's not available to the citizen, the question is why? Is it that they don't know the law? Or is it that they have tried to access it and come through roadblocks? Remember, as in the original point about the law is, one of the principles around drafting the law is to make sure that the process of gathering information is not cumbersome, is not burdensome. It actually facilitates that highway of information. Thirdly, outside the law and the citizen, as you look at the people who are supposed to supply the information, do they know that they have that obligation? I think one of the areas that Article 19 regionally has been working on is to train members of public bodies, governments, public officials, that they have an obligation under the right to know to make sure that they facilitate and ensure that people know the right as a right. So this is the whole question around the right to know being in a marketplace. So there will be supply and demand. Are those demanding, do they know what they are entitled to demand? Are those supplying also know what they're obligated to supply? I think those are very, very critical questions for us. And the last point, because I can see my time is up, is around areas of special focus. So questions around whistleblowers, questions around whenever, for example, investigative journalists ask for information, questions around elections. How much, if we take the example of elections, how much do we know from the electoral management body about, what should be in the public domain? Number of voters, number of polling stations, the whole process of balloting, casting papers until tallying. And then after tallying, how is the right to know guaranteed so that you don't have situations where you have information blackouts? This happens quite a bit in our region, and it's very unfortunate. And it's good to see that the minister and the speaker are here, because I think these are some of the questions we must address as rights issues. The question, for example, of keeping information away when it's inconvenient for state or non-state actors, just depending on who has the power. This are untenable in terms of the framing of rights. And I think the speaker is very right. The question around...
Mugambe, your time is out, sir, but you have raised so many questions, which I think are good for the audience here to ponder about the questions you have raised. And you're following the same line with the Right Honorable Speaker, asking about the purpose, whether it is fit for purpose. Thank you so much, but please stay online in case there's a question that is going to come to you. I want to check once again if Mr. Simon Eruku is with us, but also Mr. Abdul Hassan Abdi, Director of Communications and Public Relations, Puntland, State of Somalia. To begin, Simon, are you with us now online? Abdi, Director Communications, Puntland. Are you with us? Those panelists who are with us here in this auditorium. Mr. Joshua Kandwanaho, Business Process Analyst, NITAU.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Protocol observed. I bring warm greetings from NITA Uganda, the National IT Authority that is charged with the role and mandate to regulate technology development in this country. And I'm very glad to be here. In my few words, we all agree that access to information is a fundamental right. We also agree that a number of laws that have been enacted in this country to increase access to this information. As detailed in our Constitution, as detailed in Access to Information Act of 2005, as detailed in a number of policy instruments in this country. I'm glad the State Minister for Information is here. We have the National ICT policy on disability, where we look at inclusions of also the people with disabilities in this country and paving or creating technologies that can improve the access to information. We can't talk about access to information without mentioning the access to internet, which is our core mandate as government to accelerate the coverage, the efficiency, and the access to internet in this country. So as government, we've created an enabling environment in terms of increasing coverage to internet, because we look at internet as one of the main resources, one of the main ingredients that will promote access to information. Our teledensity as a country has improved over the years. We've enacted the open data standards. We have the open data portal that gives access to all citizens to be able to access and obtain information in the different projects, programs for government. It's hosted by UBOS. We've also promoted and implemented the Government Citizen Interaction Center, where it's a one-stop center that every citizen, on every information that you want or every issue that pertains government, or perhaps you've had a challenge in your local environment, there are free calls, there's a website, social media accounts, where you can go and obtain this information. We've also enacted the web accessibility standards, where we look at access to website information in this country. We've supported local governments across the country to build websites, and we are standing at around 90% of all government institutions. At least they should have a website where people can go and obtain information. Though, withstanding, we may not forget the challenges that are within, just like the Right Honourable Speaker tried to emphasize. We still have institutional framework challenges. When you look at the Access to Information Policy or Act of this country, I'll give you just one example. A person has a right to obtain information in a period not exceeding 21 days. Now, if you look at only that clause in the Act, who is ready to wait for a period of 21 days to be able to access information? Will then the meaning of that information or the use of that information be relevant after 21 days? So we need to look at how we can improve our policies, the policy and legal instruments of this country, to be able to speak to the urgency that pertains consumers of this information. So they need to be some amendments in the laws to be able to focus on the urgency on the matter that is up to us. So solutions, we need to look at our laws, strengthen them better, because we are into a digital age, we are into a digital world. We are now driving into the 4th industrial revolution. We need to look at also assistive technologies in terms of improving inclusivity for the people that want to access information. So I want to thank you so much for giving me the time to be here. But government is not seated. A lot has been done. Then also something that I forgot to mention, in these laws, it gives the right to government to be able to give out this information. But things like those need to be changed and also give room to the private society or private sector society, the civil society, to be also institutions that can be able to access or can be able to release information as and when it's requested. You can imagine a company like MTN, the telcos, how much information do they have, you know? But you find that the police only speaks to government as a body that is mandated to give out information. So things like this need to be changed in our laws and pave way for the civil society, the private sector, to always, you know, disclose information as and when people want it.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you so much. A round of applause, Joshua. And if you have a question or something, whether maybe you are in disagreement or you agree with him, we're going to have a few minutes after that so that you can interact with the panelists or even amongst yourselves. I'm now informed that Mr. Abdul Hassan Abdi, Director of Communications and Public Relations in Puntland, Somalia, is with us. Can you hear me, Abdul?
I can hear with you. Hello? Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you. Thank you so much for joining us, Abdul, from Somalia. Like they say in your country, Subaho Naksan. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning, everyone. And I'm very happy to be part of this interesting day, talking about the access to information to Eastern African countries. I'm here greeting with everyone with this position and saying to you good morning. And secondly, I'd like to talk about the access to information in our side in Somalia, especially in Puntland. In our parliament, we have created, or we have trained for journalists to have access to information in the parliament. With the last 2 years, we have trained more than 30 journalists working together with the media associations and media leaders here. The reason to have access to information is fundamental right is that everyone has a right to get the information relating to the government, relating to the civil society, and everywhere. That is why we have created teams of journalists who are working with creating with access to information in whole Puntland regions, especially in the parliament of Puntland state of Somalia. This is service we wanted to continue and reach it from other regions of Somalia and even African countries. Access to information is very important. People will know it. Also, we have created a hub that the journalists can get the information relating to the parliament in Somalia, in Puntland.
Abdi, a round of applause. Abdi, I don't know whether you ended with a question, but I want to thank you so much, Abdul, who is joining us from Puntland in the state of Somalia, in the Federal Republic of Somalia. Thank you so much, Abdul. So, Mr. Simon Eroku, it appears we are yet to get Simon Eroku, Creative Lead, Open Science Impact Innovation online. But as we wait for you, we have a panelist who is with us here, and that is Mr. Edward Sechewa, who's the ED Hub for Investigative Media. This is your moment, sir.
Like he has introduced me, my name is Edward Ronald Sechewa, a Ugandan citizen and Executive Director of the Hub for Investigative Media in Uganda. Now, the discussion here was talking about the strengthening of the implementation of the right to information in Uganda. before I talk about what we have done so far in the strengthening of the implementation of the Access to Information Law, before we went there, we started with testing how the law works in Uganda. That was way back in 2012 when we started. And we started with public bodies. So we categorized some of them as simple ones where we thought you can access information easily, and those harder ones which we thought were a bit hard to access information from those entities. Examples. We started on the simpler ones. We thought that public schools in Kampala, they are under obligation to provide information under the law. So those ones were categorized as simpler ones. And then the harder ones were government entities, agencies like NEMA, like NFA, like State House. We filed also a request in those big entities, trying to check how the law works or whether it works at all. So in the same vein, we found out that be it in the smaller ones or the simpler ones we thought, and the bigger ones, it was the same. There was no access. So once we failed, we decided to take some to court. And we won some cases against some government entities which had denied us information. This exercise from 2012 to 2014 led us to believe that much as the law was there was lack of understanding or lack of knowledge or ignorance about this law. We discovered wherever we went, the question most guys were asking was, who do you think you were to come and ask for information from us? Huh? So we realized that there was ignorance about the law from the side of those obliged to give information. In the same vein, we also realized that many Ugandans were not aware about this law, existence of this law. So in 2015, we designed a program about starting creating awareness about the law in different communities. We started with something like 14 districts. In 2018, we added on another 30 districts where we are working with different local governments, leaders, as well as citizens. We've designed a project where we interact with local leaders at the local levels. Madam Minister has left, but when she was still the LC5 chairperson of Rubaga division in Kampala, because all the divisions in Kampala were part of the Kampala, because we are taking Kampala as a district. So we had all the 5 division leaders in Kampala. We were engaging them a lot, beginning with 2018, up to when COVID started. But also we had another 30 districts plus in the countryside where we have been engaging citizens. We have trained citizens, we have trained local leaders, local councillors, district leaders about of course the project is designed in a way that there is a package for the right holders, who are the citizens. We also have a package for the duty bearers, the leaders. So all these are engaged separately.
All right.
That's what we have been doing.
Thank you so much. A round of applause to Mr. Sechewa. I now understand that Simon Eroku is on standby. Simon Eroku is Science Impact Innovation, creatively open science impact innovation. No, sorry. Simon Eroku is the, yes, creatively open science impact innovation. Simon, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
As viewers, you have about 3 minutes to make your submission.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to join you again on this day of universal access to information celebrations. It is an important day for us as people with disabilities throughout Africa. We have many challenges accessing information. Sometimes you see challenges in the area like people who are blind, people who are deaf. These categories face a lot of challenges. Because of our disability, we have a lot of barriers. Like people who are blind in Uganda, like it is visual. If there is visual information, like newspapers, they are not able to read the newspapers because the newspapers are not brailled. And information in schools, many books, many textbooks, the information is not in braille. So that is a barrier to communication. They're not able to use, to read the academic books. So if we fail to access information, the other rights, for example, the right to health, right to education, and other basic needs, yes, we have these barriers. Then as deaf people, for example, I am a deaf person. For me to access information, I need sign language. I need sign language interpreters on TV. And I also must have a way. If I go to hospital and I want to meet a doctor, I need an interpreter. So that is a big challenge because now government is not doing enough to see that interpreters are employed in the public service. We have been trying to advocate, to influence the government to make sure that sign language interpreters are employed in public service, like in hospitals, in schools, but this has taken long. The process is still on. We hope as we go on, probably we will be able to influence government to see that we are able to access sign language interpretation services. And the other issue, we want to see how stakeholders can work together to see that issues of disabilities are included in their programs. There are many programs, and how do you make them accessible to people with disabilities? It is important that we influence each other to make sure that people with disabilities are accommodated within our programs. Yeah, thank you so much for always inviting us as people with disabilities in this program so that we are able to present our issues. We hope as we go on, like UNESCO and other programs can join us to see how people with disabilities are included in their programs. Thank you.
Simon speaking through an interpreter. Thank you so much. And yes, so you have listened to the panelists. You earlier listened to the Right Honorable Speaker and other speakers. I just want to give you about 5 minutes to exchange ideas. You can put up your hand. Maybe you have a question to the panelists. Maybe you don't agree with them. That's okay. Please, you can disagree, but with respect. So who's going first before we bring in another panel to take us through a different topic altogether, but related to this day? Okay. Joshua needs just 1 more minute.
Due to time, I didn't explain the solutions that I propose after having studied laws, after having studied policy frameworks. I listed 3 or 4, 5 solutions, and one of the solutions is sensitization and awareness. This is much more needed in trying to open up to our citizens, showing them the policies that are in place, the tools, the assistive tools that they can use. We've done this together with UNESCO. We've tried to do some sensitization programs with NITA and UNESCO, trying to train website managers, trying to train people with disabilities on some of the new tools that they can use, the release that Simon has been talking about. The other solution is strengthening access to information points and officers' ability to give such information. So all information officers in all those institutions where this information is required need to be strengthened. These points need to be strengthened at both central and then also local government bodies, the districts, the community liaison officers need to be trained and strengthened. Point number 3 is to develop access to information tools and checklists for this country. That one is also much required. Solution number 4 is making the information available and accessible in the right formats for these people. If I'm, say, I have an impairment with my vision, and then you give me such a bright color document or website, then I cannot read it. I cannot get information on it. So we need to develop the right tools. And then also dealing with the culture of secrecy and officialdom. And then the last is use of ICTs as a tool to access to information in this country. There is a lot that ICT can do, but less is known to our people, and therefore you need to increase access to these technologies and tools. All
right, thank you so much, Joshua. Before we invite the next panel, I just want to give you an opportunity to exchange ideas, because this is why we are here, how we can access information much better that is going to impact the people of Uganda so that they can make informed choices for themselves. What so far you have had, what you have considered? Any question? If there isn't, please, we give them a round of applause. They take their seat, but what I know, we're going to have another opportunity for you to exchange ideas because we have another panel. So please.
Is the moderator allowed to ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, co-moderator. I do want to pose this question to you, Mr. Joshua. When you talk about inclusivity, we are looking at people living with disabilities, for instance, and the issue of concealing information, as NITA Uganda, for instance. What are you doing to see that it is readily available to them?
Thank you. As NITA, of course, I can answer that in 3 or 4 dimensions. One, we've developed web accessibility standards for this country, and this looks into all the information that is published on these websites. How can it be easily accessible? So we are looking at people with all different impairments, those that can't see, those that can't listen. Can you attach video, say for example, video notes or voice notes on these websites? We're also looking at, can you have the ability to change from this English language to your best suitable language? Is it possible to design websites in the languages that we are conversant with? Say, can you change this website from Luo, from English to Luo, or from English to Runyachitara, for example, because not all people understand English. Then we also had sensitization and training programs for the different developers of this information and those that disseminate this information, both at national and district level. We've also increased our channels of access to information from only being websites to social media pages. You can't underestimate the impact of social media, especially to the biggest percentage of our population, the youth. So we increased access also of this information to also the majority youth in this country. Then we've also implemented the open data portals with assistance from UBOS and Office of the Prime Minister. The open data portals are portals that give access to information on all statistics in this country and all the information that people want. So people can go there and freely access this information. The other is supporting the Government Citizen Interaction Center. It's a one-stop center just hosted by Ministry of ICT, and they have free toll numbers. There is a free SMS short code through people where people can actually send SMS. We all know that we all not good with smartphones, but is there a model or a medium where people can always share text messages to government, and then government can easily respond?
All right. Thank you so much. Please, gentlemen, if you can take back your seats, and let us please give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
And if you have a question or a comment, please, maybe you can reserve it. Later, we're going to have another opportunity for you to engage in a question and answer kind of session with the panelists and among us ourselves. You can still have an opportunity to talk through that. May I invite my colleague, Sandra Twinoborio, to take us through the next assignment.
Thank you, Patrick. Before you go, I do want to ask you, for the number of years you've been in journalism, for instance, someone here mentioned that when they're looking for information, someone says, who are you to ask for that information? Have you experienced that, and how have you gone about it?
Well, as journalists, we're not just conveyors, or not a conveyor belt of information. Sometimes we have also to analyze and internalize the information that we're giving. First of all, the information I'm giving, is it accurate? Is it right? Has it been verified? Is it of importance? So if it goes through some of those, if I subjected those questions, and I find it is important for Uganda, it is accurate for Ugandans, it has been verified, then that information can be released in a manner that has gone through all the gatekeepers to make sure it is not confusing, it is certain, it is exact, and it will help. So our job is to tell the stories, but the stories of the people of Uganda, tell them in a manner that is helpful. That's what we do. But as we do that, we're not just a conveyor belt of taking things. We also have to analyze what we're giving to the people. Sandra.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Patrick Kamara. Now I'm back to the podium, and I would really want to see journalists, when we talk about concealing information, it is something that I believe we face on a daily basis. I want to believe, especially for those that are in the investigative department. So please do share with us your thoughts on our social media platforms. Don't forget, the hashtag is access. Let me just get it for you. The hashtag is access to info day, and also right to know. So as journalists that are joined us today, access to information, it's very important for us. Could you please share with us your experiences? It's going to be very important for at least, evaluating the success or the progress that we have so far made. Now, getting back to a panel, we've talked about strengthening and also looking at how we can implement the right to information. Personally, I am curious to see how different countries are addressing this. I'm curious to understand how different countries are coming forward with their information laws. We are seeing a lot of issues to do with implementation. But today, can we hear from different countries? And our next plenary session, we are going to have Ms. Tahiri Rokoteheri Nyana, who is the Internet Governor from Madagascar. We'll also have Ms. Christina Chan Meto, who is the Senior Lecturer in Media and Communication all the way from Mauritius. And also Ms. Ann Derry, who's the Senior Program Officer, ICJ, Kenya. And not forgetting Ms. Slivia Nakabugo, who's the Assistant Commissioner of the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. I want to believe that for those that are present here, they can come join us here. We do have Ms. Ann Derry, who is joining us online. Ms. Slivia Nakabugo is here. Ladies and gentlemen, for those that are here, not present. A second, please. So I have been informed that Ms. Livia Nakabugo is here, right? Can we have those that are present come over and take over the stage? It is set for us. We'll be looking at the adoption of access to information laws, country experiences, and I would want us to make this quick. Can we have the representatives of the speakers come over to the stage? And as we do that, I know that Ms. Christina Chan Meto, who is the Senior Lecturer in Media and Communication, is online and is ready to address us. Over to you, Ms. Christina.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me on this panel. So it is really a great honor to be participating in this commemoration. I've been asked to address two key questions regarding the adoption of ATI law and the hurdles we face in Mauritius. To start off, it's important to know that in Mauritius, we do not have any ATI law, despite multiple commitments to introduce a Freedom of Information Act since 2005 by various governments. Instead, we have very real constraints through an Official Secrets Act that dates back to the British colonizers. The situation is not as dramatic, probably, as in many other countries, including countries which do have such ATI legislation, as we have a quite good democracy with interesting developments other than the introduction of an ATI law, of course. I'm thinking, for example, of the very rich government portal, which was introduced in 2013 and has been revamped since, which itself includes many dedicated websites for ministries, parastatal bodies, and departments of the government, including a full dedicated website for the National Assembly with the Hansard, and also a live Parliament TV since a few years ago. There's also the Open Data Portal since 2018 with a growing number of public data sets. And there's the more recently revamped Government Information Service, which carries live press conferences and full government press releases on its Facebook account. Yet, of course, we have no ATI law, and this does not look good for a country that generally prides itself on its good performance on international indices. Unfortunately, efforts by civil society organizations have been very sporadic and superficial, to say the least, to lobby for ATI in Mauritius. These efforts tend to happen primarily when there are confrontations between media people and politicians from the government, whatever be the government of the day. The media will then typically just be content with recalling the previous public commitments made by the politicians who happened to be in power at the time. A few CSO have written about the issue. Some local and foreign organizations have also organized workshops and panel debates, but to no avail so far. These are clearly insufficient efforts. We are in dire need of guidance from our peers on the continent to help us accelerate the process. Such events as this one are crucial for us to learn on how to best tackle this. Now, of course, there are many hurdles in Mauritius, many of which are not so obvious to the naked eye. The first one being that Mauritius, as I mentioned earlier, enjoys a good level of democracy overall, despite rising criticism. As mentioned before, government does provide access to information in various ways through its virtual platforms. Complementary to that, many journalists have historically had many direct personal contacts with key people in government and civil service who do leak information, or even insiders who act as whistleblowers. This creates a situation of privileged access, which media people enjoy within their competitive information market. In fact, this is such that many journalists actually become information advisors to politicians when the latters assume office as ministers or even obtain nominations to government institutions. Finally, the introduction of ATI may not be seen as a priority by government in times of economic difficulties such as the ones we are facing now with the COVID-19 pandemic. There are, of course, flaws to this line of thinking. First, one cannot only be reliant on the goodwill of those who come to power, knowing that we have a democracy with regular elections and quite regular change of parties in power, albeit in different compositions and different permutations and combinations. Correlated to that, if we really want to build back better, as is the motto for this commemoration, in order to achieve SDG 16 Target 10, we need to have ATI to consolidate our democracy and ensure it becomes sustainable and stronger in the context of a knowledge society, which we like to say we are, or which we purport to be or aim to be. if we need to make any economic argument at all in favor of ATI, if it is, of course, well implemented, the legislation and its application, the long-term benefits associated to ATI can largely exceed the investment made. So this is indeed a very, very important period for us, and we really welcome such opportunities as this one to exchange and to learn from you, from your experience. It really warms the heart to see that your people who are in decision-making positions are able to hold to participate in such events, and we would like to be able to emulate you on that account. Thank you very much, and really again, happy International Day for Universal Access to Information to all brothers and sisters on the continent.
Meto, before you go, I do want to pick your thoughts on the role the civil society organizations in your country are actually doing to promote government commitment to adopt the access to information. Just briefly, in say 40 seconds.
Well, like I mentioned, there are not many civil society organizations who specialize in access to information, lobbying for access to information like you people have over there. And really, everything needs to be done. We only have occasional civil society organizations who will raise their voices whenever there are direct confrontations between media people and people in government. And there will also be media people who will then, write editorials and columns to claim the introduction of a Freedom of Information Act without really going into the details. It tends to be very superficial. And we don't really make a very strong case. And of course, the fact that we have been pretty well ranked, although there have been changes in our rankings over the years, in for example, Freedom House Index, Reporters Without Borders Index, the African Media Barometer. That seems to create a complacent atmosphere where we don't really feel the urgency. The fact is, that's a problematic way of thinking, because we relying on the goodwill of people in power right now. It's not a good strategy, because so far, let's say we have had pretty democratic governments, but we never know what can happen in a few years' time. So we really need to step up our efforts on this account.
Step up the efforts indeed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me invite Mr. Patrick Tumwine. We all know what it means to be invited last to the podium. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Patrick Tumwine, the Technical Advisor, Human Rights GS. He is in this place, and he will also be taking us through how Uganda, for instance, that has adopted the law, how is it actually implementing it. We were supposed to have Ms. Livia Nakabugo, who is the Assistant Commissioner, Ministry of ICT and National Guidance, but Mr. Pius Mwinganisa will be replacing her. And I do definitely want to get straight to you, Mr. Pius. We know that experience has shown that public officials are clearly aware of their obligations to disclose information. They're quite responsive in several cases. This has positively impacted service delivery. Now, could you please highlight the government efforts to implement the Access to Information Act?
Thank you. I would like to seek to maybe I hope that this is okay. I'd like to, because I know my voice may not be so good, but I'd like to be more clear, audible.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that question. I'd like to first draw you back to what the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament mentioned. When we talk about access to information, we have to look at the two dimensions usually. To look at what you seek and what actually you voluntarily disclose. And for me, I see in this respect what you're raising, government has made a number of steps. For example, I know we've come from a history where way back when the law was being enacted. Of course, having the regulations in place is a big achievement. But what the government has actually done so far has been working on the issues of these structural frameworks which have been inhibiting access to information. Take a case, for example, we've been having NITAU, an institution which handles ICT, and we have information department which handles communication. This is why I really talk in different ministries, and they're not talking together, and yet you're supposed to move together. And some of these things have been achieved, for example. Now we are under one ministry, and as we speak, even why Sylvia is not here, they are working on a framework budget for this whole institution. All these agencies are working together, thinking alike. And for me, it's a big step in this direction. And another issue I see is when it comes to government, there's some things which have been achieved in terms of access. For example, as we speak, going forward, Parliament has put it in the rules of procedure. One of the things that actually government does is access to information is to deal with accountability. Where the money is. Government is doing something on behalf of the people. And what they request these people who hold the power, as the Speaker mentioned, how do they report back? They request them to account, to look at the figures, but they have added another clause this time, to submit a list by a particular date, by 15th of March every year. At least submit a list of people who have access to information. And even the reasons why you didn't give that information. For me, it's a good step in the right direction. And one thing also I'd like to mention is that many things are being done in terms of access to information, especially when you look at it in a holistic way. Because when you talk as information as a public good is something you deliberately invest in a public good, in a road infrastructure, in a water system. You specifically go for it. And when you look at information, it should be looked at in terms of development, in terms of how the purpose is generally, the development aspect. And I see this has also helped us a lot with access to information. And I really, the civil society is helping the government to be awake. Really, it's a very good wake-up call. I like the way the journey has been so far. Because I see government, for example, there's a forum for all spokespersons of all ministries. Somebody was just mentioning about the hard institutions and the soft institutions in terms of access to information. But when you have all communication officers in one framework that they can actually communicate, for me, it's a right step which has been achieved. I give an example. There was a representative from the embassy, from Ugandan embassy in USA, was mentioning that many requests were coming in, and yet she had changed position from what she was doing here as the person who was appointed as the information person. Because this law has enabled accounting officers to dedicate a person and say you're answerable to respond. And for me, it's a big achievement. And it's helping us, it's showing us that people can actually seek information and access it. And also another issue I'd like to mention is, of course, to recognize that it's a journey. As a developing country, one of the challenges we have in terms of accessing information, you'd want information, as Mr. Kamara mentioned, something that is accurate, balanced, and easily accessible. You can, if you go by the law of seeking, you want it in a particular time, you'll find that I've not even packaged the information for your usage, which is accurate and even usable. It's not a question of having just information. So that's the aspect I think we need to go the journey forward. And that's what I think we need to look at. How do you manage information very well utilized? The other day, one of the dailies mentioned, for example, about university information, for example, how they are compiling information about students and all this. If I'm a parent, I'm from the village somewhere, maybe at Tool or somewhere, and I want to choose a university where I want to take my child, which information do I need? What courses do I need? What am I looking at? What are the qualifications? Where is this person going to work? And in that respect, I want information that is easy to package, to see how can I analyze these universities that are coming up, so many of them. That information to be organized, it has to be having the tools like Nita you was saying. We have to organize that information well and even analyze it and package it for that particular usage. Another issue I'd like to mention also is about the engagement with civil society. For me, has been a very great milestone. Because before that, I was working with the Secretary Media Council. And Media Council is one institution, was one of the laws from access.
You have a few seconds to go, just to keep time.
I just wanted to use as a case study, just to elaborate. For me, it makes more meaning when I talk about tangible things that I can touch, and then maybe they communicate better. The director from Puntland mentioned about training of journalists. The media has been moving in the free fall, more or less. Much as they have the academic qualifications from the academic institutions, but when it comes to, you can call it media literacy. The guidelines Mr. Kamara mentioned about accuracy, about balance, about all those things, the gatekeeping, it has been a bit of a big inadequate area. If government can access information, but the media cannot analyze and package it for the public, it will still not be to the point what you wanted to be to achieve, to be effective and in this way. But Media Council, for example, partnered with UNDP and UNESCO, I think, one of them, the Human Rights Commission. They have been doing some trainings for over time, when I was there for some time. And this raised the bar, because the pressure came from UNDP and other agencies, UN agencies. And right now, as we speak, government for the first time is committing to provide for and it's an institution that you need to have, especially for the media. When you talk about access to information, you cannot leave out the media.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Pius Mwinganisa, representing questions. And when we do open this discussion, you can send them through, and then we'll pass them over to the Program Officer at ICJ in Kenya, Ms. Ann Derry. As Senior Program Officer at ICJ in Kenya, you did successfully lead a civil society campaign for the adoption of Kenya's Right to Information Act. You engaged different members of parliament, government officials, and even the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Today we do want to understand why did this campaign succeed, and what exactly can other countries pick up in order to see that theirs too succeed. Over to you, Ms. Ann Nderi.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I'd like to confirm that I'm audible. Can you hear me?
You? Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. You correctly said that we led a successful campaign towards passage of the Access to Information Act in Kenya, and that was in the act was passed in 2016. So Kenya has the Access to Information Act 2016. The campaign was long, over 10 years, and it wasn't one of the laws that were passed today easily by Parliament, but I must say that eventually, after a successful campaign that was led by civil society organizations, we have an Access to Information Act in place. I'll combine the lessons and experiences together. So some of our experiences can become lessons for countries that are advocating for passage of access to information laws. And I'll say that, yes, we interacted with the African Union to some levels, and especially the Rapporteur's Office on Access to Information. So undoubtedly, the African Union model law on access to information, the AU model law on access to information, was a very good benchmark that provided a very solid foundation when drafting the Access to Information Act. So I'll also ask organizations to look at benchmarking on progressive legislation, laws, and policies that are already there that can guide countries that are coming or developing access to information laws. For us, that was very, very important. We borrowed heavily from the model law, the AU model on access to information. We also looked at countries that had already enacted access to information laws in terms of experiences, in terms of provisions, in terms of implementation, so that we were ready. Say passage of an access to information law is not one of those laws that you can develop from the boardroom. So citizenry must really be engaged at every step of the campaign. So the citizenry, through public participation, through public awareness, through public education, it's important to bring them on board so that you have a demand that is rising from the bottom. You have them asking for access to information. Colleagues who've spoken before me have already said why information is important and why this information, what it means to the general public. So let's engage them on that level so that they're already asking for this law. You cannot underestimate the power of the people. So other than the model law and involving the people, let your members of parliament understand why the law, even for them, it will assist with their oversight function. It will get them to perform better as members of parliament. So get them to understand why we need an Access to Information Act in the country. And so therefore you have everybody demanding for access to information. And even when you take it to parliament, it's not news. It's something that they already know would be a tool for their work. So get them to understand early on why we need an Access to Information Act. For us, what else worked was we got a push from as a private members bill. because we'd already gotten members of parliament to understand why the law, we therefore had champions within parliament. And so getting a private member who presented the bill as a private member's bill in parliament was a big plus for us. And once the bill is presented to parliament by a private member, it becomes the property of the house. And so the speaker owned it. It became now had to go through the natural course of the hearing. And of course, civil society kept supporting the process. So a private member's bill worked really for us, because we'd already sensitized our members of parliament on why an Access to Information Act, and therefore one of them could have picked it when the government efforts were being slow. We feel that you cannot do it without an active coalition of civil society organizations. I would say Kenya's campaign was led heavily by civil society organizations. So a very strong civil society network was there, and it is important to have, that then help with the process of moving the bill. Should there be sensitization forums that are required, then they will be there to organize them, speak at those forums. Should there be public awareness forums that are required, then they shall be there to organize them and speak at them. Should there be meetings with members of parliament, then they shall be there to ensure that these are also sensitized and they're also aware of the bill. But Kenya was also at a place where we were having, so to speak, a constitutional moment where we had just revamped our constitution in the year 2010, and we were ushering in provisions of transparency, cultures of transparency and accountability. So sometimes I would urge countries to look at the context in which the country is going through. The political, social, and governance context is usually very important to see whether it would be an opportunity then for an Access to Information law to go through. And so those are some of the lessons we had in Kenya, and implementation is now at stage where we have a commission that is supporting implementation of the Access to Information Act. That's a process that's also ongoing, and I think it's a conversation for another day. But passage of the Access to Information law, I would sum it into those 4 points. Borrow heavily from countries that already have access to information laws. I look at the EU model law as a good benchmarking point. Also involve civil society organizations, a strong civil society network. We call ours the FY network, the Freedom of Information Network. Bring the people on board. You cannot have the Access to Information law from the boardrooms. Get them to demand for access to information. We worked through a private member, and so therefore your members of parliament become very critical allies at this point. And so, yeah, these are the lessons I would give for.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anderi, speaking to us all the way from Kenya, and sort of painting a picture for us on how it was able to succeed, their experience. She did mention an active private members bill that sort of also contributed to the success, and also an active coalition of CSOs. Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa, I don't know what you have to say. Do you think in Uganda we have an active coalition of CSOs? Just briefly.
Yes, thank you very much. In Uganda, actually, also the campaign for adoption of access to information law was driven by civil society coalition called COFI. I don't want to preempt Mr. Tumwine. Most likely he's going to be speaking about the Ugandan experience and the work of COFI. Thank you very much.
I will now get the thoughts of Ms. Tairi, who is the Internet Governance Forum all the way from Madagascar. In the absence of, I have 2 questions for you. In the absence of a specific law on access to information, what mechanisms have been put in place to promote citizens' right to information in Madagascar? And then 2, is there any ongoing advocacy for the adoption of access to information law in Madagascar? What support should be extended to your country?
You hear me?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Mr. Hiri? The technical team, are we able to have Mr. Hiri?
Yes, it's Mr. Hiri. It's Mr. Hiri. Okay, so before starting, I want to thank the organizer of this important event for the invitation. As representing the Internet Governance Forum of Madagascar, My today's contribution will be based on the case of Madagascar in terms of access to information laws implementation. Now, please do allow me to continue in French. Pour la première question, en l'absence de loi sur l'accès à l'information, malgré que Madagascar n'a pas encore de loi sur l'accès à l'information, une charte relative à l'accès à l'information et au partage de connaissances a été signée par plusieurs organismes disposant d'informations publiques au mois de décembre 2013. Ceci, c'est pour la mise en œuvre de leurs engagements relatifs au droit à l'accès à l'information. Cette charte propose 12 principes pour un meilleur accès à l'information publique, aux documents administratifs et toute autre information d'intérêt général. Comme exemple, dans le cadre de la concrétisation des engagements relatifs à cette charte, il y a par exemple des ateliers, des plateformes de discussion qui sont organisées par la société civile et les organismes gouvernementaux afin de sensibiliser tous les acteurs et professionnels de l'information venant de différents secteurs sur le droit à l'accès à l'information. Par ailleurs, il y a aussi un centre d'appel qui a été mis en place par le ministère de la Communication dans le but d'informer, orienter, conseiller les usagers sur les formalités et procédures administratives au niveau des différents organismes publics. Enfin, il a été aussi observé qu'il y a beaucoup d'efforts qui ont été déployés de la part des institutions, des ministères, de l'Assemblée nationale et autres organismes gouvernementaux en termes de mise en ligne des informations publiques, communicables et actualisées au niveau de leurs sites web respectifs. Maintenant, pour la question numéro 2, concernant le plaidoyer pour la ratification de la loi sur l'accès à l'information, effectivement, il est porté à votre connaissance qu'un avant-projet de loi sur l'accès à l'information a été rendu public à la fin du mois d'août 2020. Ceci est le fruit d'une élaboration de projet de loi depuis 2006 en collaboration avec l'UNESCO. Et la situation actuelle est que la première lecture a été déjà effectuée par le gouvernement et on est en attente de la suite pour le moment. Pour ce qui concerne les soutiens et supports pour Madagascar afin de renforcer l'accès à l'information, je pense que le premier soutien nécessaire concerne toujours la vulgarisation du droit à l'information, car beaucoup de Malgaches ne sont pas encore conscients de ce droit fondamental, de pouvoir bénéficier d'informations complètes, précises et fiables. Et ils ne sont pas encore sensibilisés sur l'importance de pouvoir les utiliser à bon escient au profit du développement du pays. À part cela, puisque nous avons tous constaté que la pandémie de Covid-19 a bien démontré la place importante prise par le TIC dans la vie quotidienne, ainsi il s'avère nécessaire aussi de développer les infrastructures d'accès pour améliorer la connectivité de la population au service des télécommunications afin de permettre aux citoyens malagasy d'accéder facilement aux informations requises. Finalement, le plus important concerne l'appui pour l'amélioration du taux d'alphabétisation qui est encore très bas à Madagascar. Et ce renforcement et l'amélioration du taux d'alphabétisation contribuera logiquement à l'amélioration du niveau de compréhension des informations publiques pour une utilisation pertinente et plus réfléchie des dites informations au profit du développement de la transformation de la vie de chacun des citoyens, voire du développement du pays tout entier. Ceci termine mon intervention. Je vous remercie beaucoup.
Could conclude your submission.
Yes.
Only know a few words in French. At least I'm better than some of the people in this room. And ladies and gentlemen, do allow me invite Agatha to give us a brief interpretation summary of what she just said. I was trying to use technology, but access to information has not worked for me today. Over to you, Agatha. Agatha is online. We hope you can help us understand. Today we said it is access to information. All of us here have to understand what she was saying. Agatha, can you hear me? All right, so let's see what technology did get for me from Mr. Hyrie. Example of information on the right to access to information orient, fill in the internship and formalities, and also proceed at the level of the National Assembly, the Court of Information Update at the level. And now for question number 2 concerning the advocacy for the ratification of the training bill on access to information on Facebook at the end of August 2020. The fruit of passion since 2006 in collaboration with him. Leaves 1 is the current situation in the first reading with the stars moment, and we are waiting for the sequel for the moment to see each other. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll still try as much as possible to get someone to help us interpret what our previous speaker did mention, but thank you so much. Basically, we've been trying to get the experiences of different countries, those that have implemented the laws, those that have the laws but are struggling to implement them, but also even those countries that have no laws at all. What are they doing to see that their citizens have access to information? Finally, ladies and gentlemen, do allow me to invite Mr. Patrick Tumwine. He is present here with us. He is the Technical Advisor, Human Rights Gs. Now, Mr. Patrick Tumwine, you're the very last speaker on this panel. Could you please briefly tell us the Ugandan civil society advocacy campaign that led to the adoption of the Access to Information Act with a view of helping other countries still advocating for this law to learn from the Ugandan experience? Right? And also, what help do countries need to adopt access to information laws in Africa? The other question, I'll probably put it to you. This year alone, we did see the country go to the polls in the middle of a pandemic, complete internet shutdown. No one has talked about that. How did that affect the decision-making of Ugandans? Could we also just pose it to you, and probably you have an answer for us in regards to that?
Thank you very much. Those are the disadvantages of speaking last.
I told you.
But nevertheless, I'll share the Ugandan experience in terms of the adoption of the law on access to information. And glad to know that actually the countries that have just spoken, those colleagues, Anne and the rest, picked examples from Uganda, and our experiences contributed greatly to their work in areas of adoption of the access to information law. And the process for Uganda in the enactment of the Access to Information Act began as early as 2003. But remember, Uganda had our own experiences during the Commission of Inquiry into Human Rights. There was an element that came out on access to information, the right of access to information. In that commission, besides the other rights, the access to information was fundamental, and it came out in that process. So the framers of the Constitution, of a 1995 Constitution, made it an effort to ensure that there is a provision, an article on access to information, and that's Article 41 of the Constitution that specifically emphasizes on the right of citizens to have access to information, and went ahead and stated it clearly that Parliament will make a law to ensure that this is in terms of operationalizing that provision. And so in 2013, 203, the advocates for anti-corruption agencies came up together, did a study in Uganda, and the study was clearly indicating that lack of information was leading to corruption in government institutions. And therefore, in the end of the conclusion of that study, they believe that having a law on access to information will probably will address the issue of providing information by public institution. And a coalition was formed by Ugandan civil society called COFI, which Gilbert talked about, Coalition on Freedom of Information. The Coalition on Freedom of Information was an institution created by civil society to advocate for the enactment of the law. And what did they do? Organize civil society, organize themselves, but organize the parliament. And what did they do? They came up with a private member's bill and identified a member of parliament, Honorable Abdul Katuntu, who was the mover of that bill. And that bill moved to parliament. When it went to parliament, the member's bill, this private member's bill, was presented to parliament. And the government vehemently rejected the bill, but also said, we will present our own bill as a government. And so the Speaker of Parliament gave an opportunity to the minister to present the bill. And later on, the bill was picked, made adjustments here and there, and then it was presented by government. As they say, the end justifies the means. Civil society achieved what they wanted through the private member's bill, but this bill was finally tabled by government and discussed and finally adopted and enacted. In 2005, Uganda was the first East African country to have a law on access to information. And among the first few countries in Africa, actually there were about 5 countries or so in Africa that had law of access to information by then. And so there was a lot of effort in terms of the civil society had achieved what they wanted at that time. They all believed that having a law on access to information was enough. Little they know that that was not enough, because there was a lot of laxity between 2005 and 2011 when the regulations came into force. So in between, there was a lot of campaigns around the globe. I think the colleagues, good to see Pius here, they are among the actors that were involved later on, engaging the Minister of Information to see that this law is implemented. Is having a law enough? Is having a law that is not implemented enough? But the process that we went through to enact this law was a prolonged process, involved very many actors, involved a number of civil society, involved regional actors, and in the ultimate end, the law came into place. My role and experience to share was how did that come and what lessons can others learn? Lessons which other countries can learn is one, coming together. One is identifying the need for that law, which all countries now do know. Secondly, when there are efforts of joining together with different actors through coalitions, like Kenya did, and other countries have done the same, that there is building pressure around the issue that you want to achieve, you can actually have this in place. But the other thing is a law is not enough if it's not implemented. As for Uganda, there are many other lessons that we learned as a country. There are many things that were left out in that law. So we started thinking around, moving backwards. What about how else could we do better? And our other countries, sister countries, Kenya, Ghana, and the rest have learned from our own, probably the mistakes that were there, to ensure that now they have better laws, which we could do. And in terms of the current law that we have, many the colleagues mentioned too, what has happened was testing the law. Does it work? Does the law work? You can have a law, but which doesn't work. And so 2010, 2011, that's why you could say Chewa started testing the law through going to court, through applying for information, through a lot of campaigns, through the communities which Gilbert was sharing with you. And all those have been part of the lessons that we learned as a country and experiences to ensure that the law can work. True, the law can work. The first challenge was the Angelo Izam and Charles Mangusha versus Attorney General on sharing arguments. That was the very first test case that happened here in Uganda. And then indeed, there were lessons which were learned there. And so believing that, yes, the law can be enacted, yes, the law can work, but that requires a lot of effort by all actors.
A law can work. People need, different countries need to come together to identify the need for that law, and a law is not enough if it is not implemented. Experiences from different countries, those that have the law implemented, those that don't have, those that are still struggling to implement it. All these experiences, we made sure we brought them to you so that we benchmark on the progress that we can make, on how we can pick lessons from other countries' experiences. As a result of time, please allow me to hand over to my co-moderator, Patrick Kamara, to take you through the next plenary discussion.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And gentlemen, may I suggest that maybe you take your seats? But if there are questions or comments from the audience, from their presentation, this is the moment. I could take 1 or 2 questions before I introduce a panel. Okay, we are slightly behind schedule, but we are going to try as much as possible to try to conclude in time if that is possible. A round of applause, those 2 gentlemen, as I said. Our next panel will be looking into the existing national mechanism on access to information. We have 3 people online and 1 person who's going to be joining us here where we are. Let me introduce those who are joining us online. We have Honorable Moyiga Nduru, Commissioner Access to Information Commission in the Republic of South Sudan. We have Ms. Joyce Wandia Kihara, ATI Legal Officer Commission on Administrative Justice Office of the Ombudsman in Kenya. We have Mr. Robert Kirenga, Executive Director, National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders, who's with us here. And we have Henry Maina, member of the Kenya Media Complaints Commission, who's joining us online. So let me invite for the first the person who's with us here, Mr. Robert Kirenga, ED, National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders. Please take your seat, sir. Okay, we also have, let me invite to speak first, the Honorable Moyiga Nduru, Commissioner Access to Information Commission, the Republic of South Sudan. If you can hear us, sir, this is your moment. Commissioner Moyiga Nduru. On information, access to information. Let's start with you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, if I may, Commissioner Nduru, your mic, if you can unmute that microphone, we'll be able to hear you. I understand you've been trying to talk, but we can't hear you. If you look closely, your microphone is in mute. So can
getting me? Are you getting me?
Now
Hello?
Commissioner, now we can hear you and we see you. Go right ahead, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers. I've just got out of our own celebration in Juba. We are meeting and we have adopted the sub-theme, the right to know, rebuilding communities with access to information. We, as some of you might know, we are starting from zero. We have the law, but we have not yet begun to implement. First of all, we are trying to establish the commission. I'm new, I'm almost 2.5 months. And I found only 2 staff. I'm the 3rd one. And at the moment, we are trying to establish the commission, set up structures. Without committed and competent human resource, I think it will be very hard to implement the commission's mandate. This also goes along with the logistics required to facilitate the activities of the commission. We have mobility problems. You know, access to information, sometimes you need mobility. We hope that when we meet again next year, we'll be able to report more on the positive accomplishments of the commission. What I would like to report to you today is that we have launched 3 training manuals. The first one is on the law of South Sudan. The second training manual is on the training. The manual is on the training of government information officers. And then the last one is for training civil society. In South Sudan, it is virtually hard to get any type of information you want. There are no focal persons in government institutions. The NGOs are better.
It looks like we're having comms challenges to South Sudan. We're having communications challenges in South Sudan. Commissioner Nduru, we can no longer hear him or even see him. So probably we'll get back to him if that is okay. And so allow me, we go to the next person. And we have Mr. Henry Maina, a member of the Kenya Media Compliance Commission, who's also joining us online. Henry Maina, can you hear me? We have Henry Maina, member of the Kenya Media Compliance Commission. Henry, can you hear me? We're also getting another comms challenge, getting to Maina in Nairobi. For that matter, let us listen to Mr. Robert Kirenga, who is with us here, National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders. Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick Kamara. Permit me to remove this since I'm alone here and afraid, but we are at a distance. So I would like to add my voice to AFIC and the other partners who have organized this. It's an important forum for us to exchange on ideas relating to access to information. Colleagues, when we talk about national mechanisms, we are looking at laws, policies, and institutions that can facilitate you to realize your right to access to information. And those laws and policies are within the boundaries of the country as defined by the Berlin Conference, where Uganda starts and stops. But we also have international mechanisms, including regional mechanisms. So my task today is to talk about the national mechanisms. So we begin right away from the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, and Article, also Chapter 4, where we have all the Bill of Rights enshrined there, including the specific provision that provides for the right to access to information. Then we have the Access to Information Act, as has been defined by my colleague, that came into force, I think, in 2005, including the guidelines that came up in 2011, 2012? 11, thank you. Now, that's at least the legal framework. But of course, in terms of the policy framework, the guidelines are there as indicated. But we also have institutions, the courts of judicature, where you can seek redress. We have what we call a national human rights institution, that's the Uganda Human Rights Commission. We have a whole ministry in charge of information and national guidance. And then, of course, we have other statutory bodies, like our colleague from NITA who informed us. We have the Citizen Government Interaction Center, it's a CGIC, where you can access information, where you can seek information. And of course, there are also other institutions that play a complementary role in terms of access to justice. One of them is what we call the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman office, the IGG office, is one of those. The Leadership Code Tribunal is one that could help you access information. And in terms of also dealing with those who have not been able to provide information in terms of the declaration of assets or your wealth as a public servant. Of course, there's also civil society organizations that do a lot of awareness. If you look at those publications, I guess the majority of them have been made by civil society organizations in terms of creating awareness, because you can't go to seek for what you don't know. At least when you go to an office, you must say what you want. So that literature has been provided by civil society organizations, working, of course, with international partners such as the United Nations Country Team and other UN agencies. Basically, that's what would constitute what we call national mechanisms. I don't know whether you want me to go into the international mechanisms too.
I don't know, but considering the Right Honorable Speaker, what he was telling us, that we need more to look into issues that are more local and how they can help the local people.
It's a pity you didn't allow us to interrogate the speaker's speech when it was opening, especially when say how relevant, and because he challenged civil society, but he didn't give us an opportunity to answer him directly. That he has a responsibility as a Speaker of Parliament and as a Member of Parliament to create an enabling environment for civil society organizations to be able to go to the grassroots and educate his mother, whom he claimed could not be able to read these documents. She cannot go on Twitter. But I could call her in a town hall meeting and get my colleagues who have also CBOs, our partners, down in Acholi region, to be able to translate what we are talking about in terms of access to information in Luo. But for me to be able to go there, he has to put to task the executive to allow funding modalities to operate in this country. That the DGF should be released, the suspension should be, so that we can get funding. What they're doing right now is to kill civil society, but promote capitalism, because all this money is in the banks. So the banks are the ones that are benefiting from it. They are able to lend. They are using that money, which was meant to benefit the rural citizens, including his own mother. So he should help us create that enabling environment for civil society to be able to exercise their constitutional obligation under Article 38 that says citizens have a right to participate in the governance affairs of their country.
Okay, I think that was robust answer to a robust question. And by the way, I have some interest in that as well. Let me put a disclaimer. So, we have another panelist with us, Ms. Joyce Wandia Kihara, ATI Legal Officer, Commissioner on Administrative Justice, Office of the Ombudsman in Kenya. Joyce, your 3 minutes begin now.
First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you very much for this opportunity and to express our gratitude for the continued support and the continued engagement as we celebrate the International Universal Day of Access to Information. I would also want to convey the apologies of our commissioner, the Access to Information Commissioner, Commissioner Lucy Ndungu. She was to attend, but due to our national celebrations, she has not been able to. She was not able to join us today. But as many previous speakers have said before, access to information is very key, especially now that we are advocating for more countries to be able to adopt the laws. And in Kenya, the basis of access to information and as an oversight institution, our constitution, which is one of the most progressive constitutions, provide that as a commission, we are required to protect the sovereignty of the people and to ensure that we promote constitutionalism. And as a commission, we have been able to come up with mechanisms of ensuring that access to information is implemented in Kenya. And first of all, we realize that there is still a lot of lack of information by the members of the public in terms of the benefits and and what is expected of them in terms of access to information. So we have embarked on public awareness creation, and this we have done through the creation of various information and education and communication materials. Those are IC's materials in which we share with the members of the public to enable them to know about the access to information law and how best they can be able to use it to ensure that they keep their leaders accountable and ensure there is transparency in terms of what the government is doing. In Kenya, there is both the national and the county governments. And in Kenya, you'll see that there are many regulations or other policies or acts that require that there be openness in terms of the use of public funds, in terms of availability of information, because public participation is something that is one of the values and principles that has been enshrined in our constitution, and public participation can only be achieved if there is availability of timely and and accurate information to the members of the public so that they can be able to take part in governance. So as a commission, we have been able to come up with a raft of measures of ensuring that there is implementation of on access to information. And first of all, we have come up with we have established an access to information infrastructure in most of the public entities. This would include ministries, government departments and agencies, where we require them to have an access to information officer who will have the principal obligation of ensuring that access to information is implemented in that institution. And even as a commission, it makes it easier in terms of reporting and ensuring compliance, because now the access to information officer is the one who will be able to update the commission on the implementation status of the institution in terms of access to information. We have also come up with a very vibrant advocacy on access to information, and this goes through this entails the training and capacity building of both members of the public and also public officers, so that they are all aware of their obligations under the Access to Information Act, so that it becomes easy in terms of implementation of access to information. And we have also realized that it is very important for there to be for public entities especially to be aware of the issues that and the importance and benefits of access for access to information. And we have also come up with a curriculum on access to information, in which we are targeting public officers, especially at the senior level, so they can be able to come for this training, and they are taken through access to information, the benefits, and a very comprehensive curriculum that entails of everything and that they are required to know in terms of how access to information can be implemented. We are currently planning on the launch of the curriculum, and we are hoping once the curriculum has been launched, we'll be able to reach more public entities to come for the curriculum so that they can be able to be trained. We have also come up with a monitoring tool, because we realize that in terms of implementation of access to information, it is important for there to be a tool that will enable us as an oversight institution to follow up and ensure that there is continuous compliance on access to information. So this monitoring tool is meant to be able to
interrupt you, Joyce. For those who have been watching this broadcast on NTV Uganda, this has been the International Day for Universal Access to Information, as a virtual and in-person commemoration with the theme, The Right to Know, Building Back Better with Access to Information. And for you who are watching on NTV, it's a wrap. Kwaheri. Thank you so much for having been listening and watching. We hope
Kaminga is brought to you by grab an ice cold bottle of Pepsi Max today and drink to your bold lifestyle. Enjoy maximum taste with no sugar. Now available at a shop near you. Maximum taste, no sugar.
Program Guide is brought to you by
Star Times is with you no matter the situation.
Creation of or coming up with their own domesticated access to information laws that can be able to be tailor-made to suit them in the individual counties that they come from. We have also been, we are currently working on our regulations, which will go a long way in providing an operationalization framework in which access to information can be achieved. So as you can see, as a country and as a commission, we are really committed in ensuring that access to information is implemented. And even as we sit and discuss, we look forward to partner with you and other institutions and see how best we can be able to champion for access to information and be able to come up with joint ways in which we can be able to ensure that there is implementation of access to information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce Wandia Kihara from the ATI Legal Officer Commission on Administrative Justice, Office of the Ombudsman, in the Republic of Kenya. We have another panelist who's joining us online, Henry Maina, member of the Kenya Media Complaints Commission. Henry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
For joining us. And if you maybe you can go for this question, what is the role of the African Commission on Human Rights and People's Rights in promoting the right to information, but also what has been your experience in advocating for human rights?
Okay, thanks so much. I begin by indicating that the African Commission on Human and People's Rights is the mother of access to information on the continent. And it began these discussions long before even the first country in Africa passed their laws in the year 2000, that was in South Africa. So the African Commission had begun discussions on the importance of access to information, and it had passed a number of resolutions asking member states to begin thinking through processes of passing such laws. So it did this through a resolution, and later on, it passed in the year 2002, it passed the Declaration of Principles on Freedom of Expression in Africa, which had a part that spoke about access to information. This declaration was later on reviewed in 2019 to make it have more comprehensive parts on access to information and other freedom of expression issues. But the second part of what the African Commission has done was that it published through a very collaborative process the model law on access to information in Africa. At that time when that came out, we only had 5 countries in Africa that had access to information laws. That model law gave African states something they can use because the comparators previously were largely European and American countries. The third thing that the African Commission has done through the special mandate holder, a special rapporteur, currently Honorable Jamesina King, a commissioner from Sierra Leone, is that they can help countries, and I had Christina from Mauritius indicating support, that the special rapporteur can offer promotional missions, can offer advocacy meetings in country where she would speak to government officials, she will speak to civil society, she will speak to the academy to encourage them to pass the law and to share experiences for countries that have passed them elsewhere. My experience in this has been that while Africa seems to have lagged behind other regions, it has begun to catch up. As we know today, we have about 25 countries that have laws from a paltry 5 in a decade and a half ago. So we are moving on the right trajectory, but the pace could be faster if the Commission got resources and did its work more. We know that Eastern Africa, we still have 7 countries that don't have those laws. And on the continent, we have an entire 30 countries that don't have laws. And Central African region is disproportionately affected. So we can't continue with that advocacy, and the Commission is there to serve member states, but also to serve civil society within the region. But how do you advocate at the African Commission? First, as civil society or any organization, you need to have accreditation. So without accreditation, you cannot directly speak to the Commission. You can speak indirectly by sending letters to them, but you will not be allowed to take onto the floor and share what your issues are. If we all get to seek to get accreditation, then that gives us a platform to influence decisions of the Commission in terms of resolutions, in terms of declarations, and in terms of influencing what missions, be they promotional or enforcement missions, they can get into. But we can also litigate. So we can send cases to the Commission where we have been denied information, and that would be effective. So as a member of civil society, I have managed to litigate at the Commission. I have managed to be there for advocacy sessions. I have managed to work with different special rapporteurs on freedom of expression and on other issues. So there are country-specific commissioners. For instance, If you want to know the commissioner in charge of Uganda or in charge of Kenya, you can just go onto the African Commission website and you'll get to know, because each commissioner is in charge of 5 countries. But I've already spoken to the issue of the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information for Africa, who is Honorable Justice Jamesina King, a lady from Sierra Leone, and a judge, sitting judge. So she's quite knowledgeable in these processes. But her predecessor was Honorable Lawrence Mute from Kenya, and before that, we had Pansy Tilakula from South Africa. So it's possible for us to join hands with them and advocate. And I remember we brought Pansy to Uganda, I brought Pansy to Rwanda, I brought Pansy to Kenya, and those advocacy efforts helped us to expedite the passage of the law and even look at how the implementation regulations ought to be. So in a brief, that's what the Commission can do. But the Commission also requires each member state to file periodic reports after every 2 years. And as we speak today, a number of the countries on the call have not fulfilled their obligation of filing periodic reports. Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia have a number of reports that are pending. So as civil society, we can equally submit our shadow reports to the Commission as a way of pushing, nudging our governments so that they get to do that which they committed themselves to do.
Right, I want to thank you so much, Mr. Henry Minor, a member of the Commission, of the Media Complaints Commission, and telling us about the role of the African Commission on Human Rights, and also giving us their own experience. Thank you so much, Asanteni Sana. There are some people who are sending questions. Unfortunately, those who answer them, some of them are not here. Maybe Robert Kakuru Byamujisha said, what is the government of Uganda ready to do to enforce access to information, especially on public contracting on both centrally and locally procured public contracts? The question is on procurement. And Akol said, what can Uganda do to make sure young people have access to information, mostly young people who are facing a challenge of accessing information? And Robert Kakuru, his question was to the Right Honorable Speaker, but the Speaker now is not in the House. By the way, we have more than 100 people who are participating in this discussion, over 100 people on Zoom. All right, unless you have a question to Mr. Robert Kirenga, now maybe you can raise your hand and tell us where you're from and ask the question, or maybe give a comment. But if that's not the case, allow me to thank him and to take his seat so that we can have another panel. That will be the last panel, 20 minutes of discussion, which will be chaired by Sandra Tinobrio. Please, Robert. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Patrick Kamara, for that. I believe we continue to have a number of examples that we can learn from. Just to ask, are we still okay? Do we want to stretch a little bit, or we can continue? We stand up a little bit, or we continue? Looks like we are okay. Mr. Patrick, are we okay? Okay, great. Now, our next session is going to be the very last, and I believe the people behind the cameras, this is something that you probably were looking forward to as well. We are going to look at the information ethics, the role of the media in promoting access to information. Now, allow me invite Dr. Emily Comfort Marachu, who is the Director, Africa Policy Center. She is here. Please come over and take over the podium. We also have Dr. Musakali Joseph, the Senior Lecturer at Moi University, joining us online. And also, ladies and gentlemen, we will invite Dr. Peter Mwesije, who is the Executive Director of African Center for Media Excellency. I believe he's here. And Dr. Helen Amunga, who from the University of Nairobi, and ICIE African Chapter Vice Representative, joining us online. Can we have our panelists sit so that we get started? Allow me invite once again Dr. Peter Mwesije. If he's not here, please can I be informed? All right, let us start with the panelists that we have here. And All right, let us start with Dr. Emily Comfort from Director Africa Policy Center. Over to you, just to quickly set the pace for this discussion. When you look at your topic, information ethics, and the role of the media in promoting access to information, do you think they're doing a fantastic job? Are we doing a great job?
Thank you very much, Sandra. I think that you're also doing a fantastic job already, right there moderating. But my topic is really to discuss information ethics, and information ethics means that we care about the processes that bring about this information. We care about how we organize that information, how we share it, and who actually accesses it. And so if we are evaluating whether we are doing a good job or not, we have to be thinking around all of those issues. Are we organizing? Are we collecting in the right manner? Do we care about the accuracy of that information? Are we fact-checking? Are we ensuring that what goes out there is the right information? So when we are looking at access to information, we are not just looking at the media, news media as we know it, because we are looking beyond the news. We are looking at information that government may have in their ministry. We are looking at information that public officials may have that are relevant for our citizens. And I think the Right Honorable Speaker was very correct when he said that, is the law actually useful? We have the law, yes, but what's a good law that is not being implemented well? What is it good for? It might not be actually good to have a law that is not being well implemented or that is not making sense to the public. But the role of the media comes in when you think about the fact that my mother, who may not have access to Twitter or social media, can still have access to information via radio, via television, via other platforms. Because Twitter or social media is not the only platform through which my mother, for example, should access information. She may not be on social media, but she has her radio in her kitchen, in her workspace, in whatever she's doing. So the media then begins to play the role of analyzing and evaluating information that is available in order to share with my mother, for example, using radio, who might be up country. But in most cases, our radio stations, for example, you're asking about whether we are doing well, are not doing enough to pass on this information to the public. They are not doing enough to ensure that they break down information that is often written in very difficult elitist language. For example, if there's a report, I've been looking through reports on my table there, I don't know how many people can break down that information, but the media then plays that role to ensure that that information is shared. But there are many other roles that the media can play in terms of ensuring that we have a very ethical information out there, because the landscape of communication has really changed. So many people are now out there sharing information who may not even authenticate the information they're sharing. So the media can develop standards and practices that, there are some critical codes of ethics that the media can develop and ensure that people have access to those, but also to engage with policymakers and see that the right environment for people to access information actually exists. Without that, we cannot be talking about access to information. But also, I hear a lot of talk about civil society, advocating for this, but the media should not leave advocating for certain things to civil society alone, should work together with civil society, especially on issues of policy or implementation of frameworks such as the Access to Information Act, or even ensuring that information that is out there is ethical. It's very difficult to know what information is ethical and what is not, and that will require the media doing a lot more work empowering citizens. If we do not empower citizens to be able to evaluate information and know what information is accurate and not, then we are not going to be doing them justice. For them to know that they can access information through certain offices, they must also first of all have that information. If they do not have that information, and that can only be given to them by the media, of course, the media can play that role. The media can also generally inform and advocate for certain positions. I am thinking in terms of the environment within which we operate. In most cases, we talk about access to information as if it is an isolated thing. It isn't. It is very intricately linked to the nature of freedom of expression, the extent to which citizens can freely express themselves. It is very linked to our democratic space. It is very linked to the nature of the civic space. Do we have actually the right civic space for people to engage? If you do not have the right civic space for people to engage, then they are not likely to require or to request information from those who have it. So those are my thoughts in as far as the role that the media can play in ensuring that information is ethical, is accurate, is first of all fact-checked. And I listened to Kamara talking about what they do as journalists, but the reality is that our context right now, the people sharing information are not caring about those things, especially if you look online. There's a lot of rumors, a lot of falsehood, a lot of all kinds of things. And we need to empower citizens to know what information is good and what is not.
On that, the role of the media basically to play the watchdog role. However, what happens if the media itself cannot get access to information that they want to deliver to the public? In your own, from where you sit, how can they go about that?
It's been already stepped up, okay. I think journalists in general should be able to have access to information. Of course, there is always going to be classified information that people do not want you to access and so on. But there are mechanisms through which the media can still get that information. You can negotiate with the policymakers. You can negotiate with people who have those information, that information. You can also require court to make judgment on cases where there is need for that information. A case of interest is, for example, the oil agreements, where people have said we don't know what is going on, but journalists can get information that they need by ensuring that court grants them permission to get it. So those are some of the ways that they can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Emily Comfort Maracho. You who's watching us online, please, if you have any questions, do send us your thoughts, and of course, use either hashtag. Will be there. Our team is available, and it will pick some of these questions, and we'll pose them over to the panelists. I do have another question, but allow me first take Dr. Musakali Joseph, who is the senior lecturer at Moi University. And I know you're joining us online, and I want to start by asking, from where you sit again, what is the role of the media in promoting access to information in Africa in this digital age? And also, how can we promote a free press while ensuring compliance with ethical conduct? Over to you.
Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking AFIC and the other organizers of this important day that we are commemorating this day. Thank you very much. I want to start by saying that growing up in a small village in Kenya, you know, I remember that you know, my father being a teacher, he had a small radio, and every time that we had important national celebrations like Labor Day and all that, I could see villagers, my neighbors and all that, streaming in, coming to listen to the radio. And those who could not understand, even the following day, they could come and ask my father, what did the radio say? So that means that the media, especially mainstream media, was really playing a very, very important role. And that role has continued to be carried on by the media. Only that, of course, with the changes in technology and, you know, like social media, trying to derail mainstream media and all that, but it's all media anyway, and we're still playing that role. And so I feel that the media still has a very, very, very important role to play, you know, in terms of access to information. And we know that information is power. We still carry that. We still, you know, say that. We still say, you know, preach that. The media still focuses and cannot divorce from their, you know, traditional role of informing, just like the previous speaker said, from their traditional role of informing, educating and entertaining the masses. But it's also called upon, you know, to go further and build on mechanisms, put on systems in place that can enable the public to access information in a more open and engaging way. I can say that the media has, you know, four or so more roles to play in the context of ATI. Apart from carrying on that traditional role of informing and educating the masses, the media, as my previous speaker said, they need to go further and authenticate that information. Authenticate, you know, whatever they get to the public. You know that these days, you know, journalism is basically, you know, verifying gossip. So how does the media do that? By, you know, digging deep to understand what they are talking about, and then engaging the public in a way that the public can accept that information as genuine. So in this regard, also, I want to challenge or, you know, say that the mainstream media, they must make themselves relevant and dominant on social media as well, because we know that more and more people are, you know, engaging on social media and all. So mainstream media, since since they already have, people already have trust of, you know, of the mainstream media, they must make themselves relevant to the on social media as well, so that they can compete for audience, you know, with other people who are on social media, because people are already always posting on social media. So secondly, also I can also say that the media needs to set the agendas and generate debate. How can they do this? By engaging with the experts, engaging with the expert opinions, and this can be done even you know, in local radio stations with in locally translated publications and so on, engaging experts on certain issues that people need to discuss. For instance, land issues. How do people access information on land? How do people access information on education? And then engage experts. And, you know, the experts, of course, through these engagements will, you know, in a way inform people where to get this kind of information, how to get that, and that kind of information, and even how to use that kind of information. In Kenya, this has been happening, I know, and it has been done with the initiative of the media and also even the government itself. I can also say that the media, you know, needs to disseminate a democratic culture in which tolerance, you know, with tolerance, so that people can accept alternative points of view. This they can do by retrieving information, repackaging that information, and disseminating it in a professional way, so that even if it is sensitive information, for instance, remember that you know, professional journalists do not set out to twist story angles, but they seek to present accurate and impartial news or stories in a way that you know, it's acceptable to the general public and it doesn't cause any conflict. I can also say that the media can also use things like entertainment, because it's one of their primary roles. You know, as methods of access to information. Comedy, for instance, is used in Kenya extensively in programs, TV programs and radio programs. And in doing that, they do that with a view to educating the masses on access to information. Skits, even on, you know, like during national celebrations and all that, they are used, and these are broadcast through the media so that people can learn how to access information on land, how to access information on education and all that. So that can also, you know, be used in a way, you know, by the media. We can also say that the media plays a role of being, you know, ATI activists, not just monitors, but they can also be activists in a way. They can do by scrutinizing, you know, looking at documents and, you know, digging deep to implement the laws, you know, in the area and all that. So they can do that on behalf of the general public. Additionally, just like the previous speaker said, we need to engage, the media needs to engage or collaborate with other independent bodies like AFIC, for instance, UNESCO and other NGOs who have, partnered to make, like this commemoration possible. Especially those that work on legal literacy, which is a key in any democratic process. So I can say that, that together with the other things that the media can engage in is what we can do as the media. Thank you very much.
Again, I love to see where people stand their own experiences. What are some of the clear policies that you think should be put in place to implement the access of information by the media?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Sorry about that. What are some of the policies that you think should be put in place to support the implementation of access to information by the media?
Okay, I want to say that just like one of the speakers from Kenya mentioned, an engagement, especially with the bodies that take charge of the media, like the Media Council of Kenya. The Media Council of Kenya, for instance, has been working closely with the government and other bodies that have been working with the government to bring out, certain policies, information policies and all those that, are brought together. And there's also public engagement where people come together as stakeholders to look at some of the policies that, work especially that, strengthen the relationship between the media and the public. So these policies usually are brought to the limelight through the media and through public engagement. So this, can be done through public engagement and the media. Thank you very much.
Public engagement and the media. Let us get more lessons, more experiences from Dr. Helen Amunga, who is from the University of Nairobi, and ICIE, the African Chapter Vice Representative. And my two main questions to you are, what role does ethics play? I think you did mention a lot about ethics. What role does ethics play in the promotion of access to information in Africa? And why is information ethics an important subject today? Over to you, Doctor.
Hello and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm privileged to be with you today, and I thank AFIC and partners for having me on board. I've been asked two questions, but I'll start by contextualizing our issue just by use of some example. So the question at hand basically is, what is the role of the media in promotion of access to information? Let me start by appreciating what the previous speakers and my fellow panelists have already highlighted about the topic. Ethics touches on morals. And when you talk about morals, especially in the global village that we live in now, you realize that what is ethical to me may not be ethical to you. So then that brings us to the issue of the many dilemmas when you talk about information ethics. I'll give an example of the African context with media. So maybe we could just ask a basic question like, what is the current focus of African media? And my general view is that many media houses in Africa are more focused on politics for various reasons. Number one is, of course, politics is big business. It pays more because it bribes more. And then it is also mainly owned by politicians. And we now see many media personalities employed by these politicians, either directly as bloggers or even as in-house media operatives who ensure that what these politicians want to be pushed ahead and disseminated is actually what goes through. And as a result, their focus is not really championing for access to information by all. Why? Again, because this topic will not really sell. it won't garner more listenership or viewership, nor attract a wide social media following for the stations and even for the staff. And that now gives us some ethical issues that we could try to address. So then we go back to answering our first question. I believe the media has a vital role to play, as well as many opportunities when it comes to promoting access to information. And we just need a paradigm shift where we focus more on the professional mandate of the media. And then we also need to just go back to the media conventions and frameworks. For example, the Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that, among others, emphasize access to information by all. And secondly, media needs to champion access to timely, relevant, and authoritative information, as opposed to being partakers of spreading misinformation and fake news, which is professionally unethical. And so I also wish to see a media fraternity that collectively works towards achieving sustainable development goals. And in the context of access to information, we could also maybe be happy to see a media fraternity that implements SDG number 17, on partnerships. Currently, I see it a lot in Kenya, where the media is good at poaching each other's stuff. But I am arguing that this effort could be redirected towards collaboratively working on projects that inform the masses of the value of information and where to access specific information for specific purposes. That is something very basic when it comes to ethics. Let people know the value of information, where to access it, and for what purpose. And additionally, collaboration should go beyond the media houses. Let media houses look for stakeholders like libraries, archival centers, museums, among others, so that we can highlight what they do, the benefits of their services to society, and even opportunities for the masses. And I'm going to just recommend the use of earned media as a strategy that we could easily use to come up with features and relevant social media activities, which is a cheaper way of reaching out to the masses. And so my other panelists have also talked about information repackaging, and I would like to acknowledge that many media houses are actually packaging information on farming, health technology, gender-based violence, radicalization, and etc. But more is needed in the media to regain its glory as champions of development, both nationally, regionally, and even globally. However, let's just acknowledge the many complex scenarios that the media find themselves in, including but not limited to, even the threats that media houses or staff face when it comes to championing anything that may be seen to be going against what politicians do. So I hope that I've been able to answer some of those questions, and thank you so much for having me today. Thank you.
Much, Dr. Helen Amunga, and we are still discussing the right to know, building back better with access to information. This was a very last panel, but I am just curious if it is possible for us to get a journalist. I mean, we are talking about the media, and it would be important to have someone at least briefly tell us their experience among the journalists that are here present. If we can have at least one person to, in a minute, tell us their experience in terms of when they are accessing information to give accurate, objective information that is not biased. Do they really always get that information, and what are some, we are talking about the policies that we can adopt, but you, from where you sit as a person in the media, how best do you think, what policies do you think would work best for you? Is this the part where I say, please don't disappoint me, and you don't show up? I have a lot of faith.
The problem is that you are asking questions to people who are used of asking questions.
I know.
Our job is to ask, in most cases,
I know.
not to answer. But if I may report, I know that Angelo Izama and Mwangusha Charles went to court because they could not access information on the oil sharing agreements.
Yes.
I also know, I think Raymond Mujuni asked for information from the Electoral Commission. I think it was to do with the voters register in 2015. Up to now, they have never replied. So that's how the dilemma is. they are working in.
Yes, thank you so much, Patrick. So in terms of our plenary discussions, thank you so much for being here. I do want to allow you get back to your seat and take a bottle of water. It's already present at your table. And then we'll later on, of course, listen to a bit. Nancy's ready? Not lunch.
Nancy. Oh, it's around that time when you can confuse that word. I hear you.
Over to you, Patrick. You can take over from this, please. You can take over.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Now we are almost coming to the end of our discussion this afternoon. We now want to go to action planning on the way forward. We have an outcome statement. Somebody has been putting together all this. I understand Nancy Murangu, who's joining us online, is now ready. Nancy, can you hear me?
Yes, please, I can hear you. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We do. Thank you so much. You have about 3 minutes to give us the way forward, action planning. This is your moment. But just before you get on the floor, let me tell Mr. Aiden Eyakuze, Executive Director of Aweza East Africa, who is also joining us online, to be ready because you'll be giving us the closing remarks. Nancy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It is a delight to join all of you. Greetings from Kenya, and I welcome all of you to come to Kenya when you get time to travel. I take this opportunity to appreciate all of you for finding time to join this timely conversation on the International Day for Universal Access to Information. And today our theme has been the right to know, building back better with access to information. I appreciate all the participants that have been able to join both on site and virtually. And all of us have been able to deliberate on key issues that include the first one is that public access to information is a fundamental human right, and it is a cornerstone for the enjoyment for all other human rights. Secondly, we've all discussed and agreed that there is lack of implementation of the access to information laws and compliance with the set regulations. This could be catalyzed by lack of information sharing, and number 2, lack of the infrastructure to disseminate the same information. Thirdly, there is a significant number of countries without specific laws on access to information. And I am glad that one of the key partners to this event is the African Union, and I believe that they are able to support the countries that are deficient of this framework to be able to come on board and develop one for their own. The other key issue that came up is that there is limited responsiveness and feedback mechanisms regarding access to information, reporting on the status of implementation of the right to information across member states. This has been caused by lack of a standardized way of reporting. And I believe if all of us can look at the African Union framework on the access to information, we can collaborate, we can partner, and come up with one framework that will enable all of us to report in a systematic way. The other issue that came up was the limited disclosure of information that curtails citizens' access and participation in governance, service delivery, monitoring of public contracts, and this in turn limits transparency and accountability. The other key issue that came out was there is lack of general awareness about access to information, legal framework among the citizens and public officials. This says that as stakeholders, as partners who've been a beneficiary of this session today, we have to go back to our stakeholders and find out what is it and what else that we need to do. Then lastly, the other key issue that came up was the issue of funding. Yes, money may not be enough, but we might and may be forced to think outside the box and ask all of us, how can we leverage on ICTs? How can we leverage on online platforms to ensure that access to information is accessible by all? Secondly, I would like to move on to looking at what all of us have committed today. First, the African Union has committed to working with all of us here to be able to have our information infrastructure in place. And secondly, UNESCO has committed to support the African member states and civil society organizations to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by promoting access to information and strengthening other enabling legal frameworks. Thirdly, our government representatives and other stakeholders at this session have committed to increase the public participation in service delivery processes through the access to information. And fourthly, stakeholders have committed to support the government, UNESCO, African Union, and any other entity that deals with access information to be sure that we avail ourselves to be taught, to be trained, and to be empowered on how to access this information, both as peers, as trainers of trainers, so that we are able also to train other people. Lastly, the media commits to promote access to information by raising awareness on its significance to the realization of other rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nancy Murangu, for the way forward. I believe that we have all taken note of that, and there's a lot of taken out of this room. Remember, it's not just about the talking, it is about the implementing. When we get out of here, we shouldn't forget all the things that we've actually shared. We'll now hear from Aiden Eakuze, who is the Executive Director of Twaweza East Africa, and I also would like to, before I invite him here, I would like to hear the thoughts of the Africa Freedom of Information Center. Is there something you would want us to know, since you're one of the big organizers of this event? Would like to know from, there's nothing, it is lunchtime, we shouldn't take more time. Okay, allow me invite Mr. Aiden Eakuze, the Executive Director to Twaweza East Africa, to give us the very last closing remarks. Is he present physically or online? He's online? Great. I think we can hear, we should be able to hear him. Over to you, Mr. Aiden. So anyway, as we end this conversation, we know that we've been looking at building back with access to information. This event has been happening all the way from 10 for 3 hours. You've been seated here sharing with us your different ideas. I'm told now we can get access for the closing remarks. Over to you. I will hand over to you.
Good afternoon. It's good to be with you all. My name is Aiden Eakuze. I'm Executive Director at Twaweza East Africa and Tanzania, and it's a real pleasure to join you from Dar es Salaam, where we've also been having our own conversation about the right to information a day. I'm told you've had a really rich conversation there in Uganda, and I'm glad that you're able to touch on some of the main elements and the ideas around how access to information can really help build back better from this this pandemic that the whole world has been suffering.
But I know that our team is working really fast to make sure that we have him on. And as we wait for him to get back, if there's anything I've seen or learned from this place, is that the right information at the right time to the right people through the right channels can be life-changing. It's very important for us, as we reflect on the things that we've discussed here, to find out ways of making all the things that can make access to information really better. And it starts with each one of us in our different capabilities. You know, if you're in the civil society groups, if you're with the media, if you're with the government, what exactly are you doing? I'm still hoping we can get the closing remarks. Not yet. Just to get some more information.
Hello? Are you hearing me? Oh, I should continue.
Yes, please, you should.
My screen is telling me strange things. So let me continue just to make the point that the speaker challenged us really to make the access to information useful for ordinary citizens. The gap between government and citizens, of course, is filled by civil servants themselves who are implementing government policy. And if they themselves maybe are not aware of the right to information requirements, the law, the regulations, then they're less able to be of value to citizens. And the citizens themselves perhaps think it's too hard, or I'm not going to get what I need, and so therefore they reduce their demand for access to information, for information that is consequential in their own lives. So we have to try and, in a way, really encourage the civil servants who are providing public information to citizens to do so in a timely manner, in a complete manner as possible. I wanted to just end with a few observations around why access to information is so important in this time of the COVID-19 as we try to build back better from what we have all experienced around the world. I think number one, we need guaranteed access to good information so that we can manage and reduce our collective risk in our communities and in our countries, so that we can also have a realistic sense of the risks that we collectively face. Tanzania has gone through an interesting experience of really downplaying the presence and the risks that we face as a community, as a country on COVID-19. We are now getting out of that and trying to address vaccine hesitancy and making sure that people are actually getting vaccinated in order to deal with the deadly virus. So managing and reducing collective risk is one area. The second reason that it is important to have access to information is that it really promotes collective compliance and contribution to dealing with this emergency. Scant information damages trust and it erodes individual compliance, which is absolutely necessary for the common good. The third point is we need access to information really to see how our resources, taxes, our people, our time are used to tackle the emergency and to recover our economies. So for monitoring and accountability purposes, it is really important. We need it to deter corruption through open procurement, open contracting, and to improve accountability. The fourth is we need access to information to promote social equity and social cohesion so that we can learn about and shape opportunities for an equitable build back, that the opportunities are equitably distributed to people who have suffered disproportionately from the COVID-19. A lack of information makes it harder for them to seek opportunities to improve their livelihoods. So, and with it, the cracks that have been laid bare by the pandemic will widen and perhaps may even become permanent. And the final thought is that we need access to information to help us as a society to choose between difficult moral options. For example, should vaccination be mandatory or should it be voluntary? Trade-offs are very difficult, such as these, and good information is central to making good decisions. So with that, I'd like to really thank you once again for inviting me to make a few remarks and to thank you for engaging with the right to information and access to information, and to see how we can really use this right, expand the right, and make sure that it allows us as a community, as countries, in the world to come back from the pandemic better and stronger than we were in the past. So have a great afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon from Dar es Salaam.
Good afternoon to you.
For the very closing remarks. So you also bring out a number of things that we can continue to reflect on. And as we conclude, I do want us to give ourselves a round of applause for being patient up to the very end for 3 hours. It's not easy to actually sit and listen and pay attention. So ladies and gentlemen, we've been holding this event under the theme, The Right to Know, Building Back Better with Access to Information. And our hashtag is definitely going to stay online. So do not get tired of tweeting. For those that were not able to share their thoughts here, you can continue expressing your thoughts on our social media platforms, and we can continue interacting on the same. This is something that cannot happen in a day. It is a continuous process. A very big thank you once again to our partners, the Government of the Republic of Uganda, UNESCO, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the African Union, Africa Freedom of Information Center, and Twaweza East Africa. Thank you so much for making this event possible. We are here because you decided to hold this event. So we do thank you and appreciate you. I want in a special way to thank the Africa Freedom of Information Center, Mr. Gilbert Sendugwa. Thank you so much for gathering us here to have this day celebrated, for us to reflect on the progress we've made, for us to reflect on how far we've gone with implementation. And I also want to say we should uphold Kamara and I for making sure that you are still here. You did not go anywhere. We appreciate you so much. And as we conclude from where I am, I believe that information can be the difference between life and death, honestly. If you get timely information at a time you need it the most, you will most likely survive. So let us all work together to see that we support one another, be it in the media support the civil society, governments, ministries. How can we all come together and see that we have the right information at the right time to the right people? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I've been your moderator, Sandra Twinovideo.